Chapter 328. Three supermasters in a bloody battle in the blink of an eye. Two late-stage minor heaven realm experts had died without any resistance. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Some of the people who originally wanted to capture others, to threaten Qin Feng, immediately dispersed. What kind of joke was this? Even small heaven realm late-stage experts couldn't react in time. So how could they survive? Now that Qin Feng had turned into a monster, his strength was terrifying. Aside from 9th stage heaven realm experts, no one was his opponent. Qin Feng's right hand hugged Qin Yao's waist, while the big black hand erupted with a strong suction force, pulling the exploding flower Gong Xiaoxi, Tan Xian, and Jing Wui over. With a heavy stomp of his feet, Qin Feng brought the few of them and flew off into the distance. In the air, all the experts immediately opened up a path. That kind of impact was not something they could block. "Bastard, do you think I'll let you escape?" Suddenly, a cold shout rang out. Immediately after, a golden light bloomed and slapped down on Qin Feng's head. The spirit energy fluctuations surging from the golden light had already reached the 9th stage heaven realm. Obviously, this was the second 9th stage heaven realm expert from the imperial capital. Roar! Feeling the threat from the golden light, Qin Feng roared, but his hands were bound and he couldn't meet the attack. If he left, Qin Yao and the others definitely wouldn't be able to survive the aftermath of a 9th stage heaven realm expert's attack. After all, they were too close to each other. Qin Feng roared again and again, but in the end, he could only turn around and bear the attack with his back. Pung! The golden light heavily hit Qin Feng's back. Immediately, blood exploded. Qin Feng's body shook and quickly fell. Hula! During the process of falling, an extremely powerful attack suddenly came. This was a big move that Sidu Ao had prepared at the right time. He wanted to take Qin Feng's life with one attack. Now that things had developed to this extent, how could he still have the thought of capturing him alive? At the critical moment, Qin Feng roared and his body shook. Suddenly, a black light bloomed behind his back. Then, under everyone's horrified gaze, a pair of 3-meter-long black wings appeared. The black wings flapped and the wind howled. Qin Feng suddenly stopped and dodged Situ Ao's attack. He quickly landed on the ground, shielding Qin Yao and the others behind him as he stared at the two 9th stage heaven realm masters. The void rippled as golden light swept out. Soon after, a figure appeared. It was an old man in a golden robe, holding a golden dragon-headed walking stick. A ferocious pressure spread out, causing the void to tremble. "It's Elder Huang Ji." Everyone was overjoyed. They recognized that this golden-robed elder was a great expert from the imperial palace. One of his daughters was an imperial concubine, and to put it bluntly, he was also the father-in-law of the current emperor. It could be said that his status was quite noble. Moreover, Elder Huang himself was a very terrifying master. He had been a 9th stage heaven realm master for many years, and it had been several decades since he last fought. However, it was obvious that he was a terrifying master, even stronger than Sidu Ao. "Elder Huang." Situ Ao cupped his fist. His tone was very respectful, but it was clearly a bit lower. It could be seen that he also had respect for Elder Huang in his heart. With Elder Huang taking action, everyone believed that no matter how much Qin Feng turned into a monster, it would be useless. Xiao! Suddenly, a light beam blasted over. Qin Feng twisted his body and suddenly appeared beside Gong Xiaoxi. He hugged her and turned around. At the same time, the light beam hit his back. Qin Feng was hit hard and flew out, coughing up blood. His back was a bloody mess. Even the black wings were broken, and blood flowed all over the ground. Lying on the ground and letting go of the person in his arms, Qin Feng's face was pale, but he still smiled warmly. "Are you all right?" Gong Xiaoxi looked at him in a daze and asked, "Why did you save a useless person like me? Is there a need to say such things between us? You came with me, so I have an obligation to protect you. Otherwise, how can I face Master Ingyuan in the future?" Qin Feng smiled, his smile spreading from the depths of his eyes to his entire face. It was very infectious. Of course, this was only for Gong Xiaoxi. To others, it would be disgusting. When this face smiled, it was even more terrifying than when it wasn't. Gong Xiaoxi's eyes went blank, and soon tears poured out. "Little Shi, don't cry. If we don't survive today, we'll be buried here together." He smiled and wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes. Another person appeared, his body surging with spiritual energy. He was also a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master. His eyes were somewhat dark as he stared at Gong Xiaoxi. "Old Tan, now is not the time to take revenge. Let's deal with this monster first." Elder Huang looked at that person and said. Tan Zong smiled faintly. "Fine, the grudge with your grandfather will be paid back sooner or later." The appearance of 3 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters made the people of the imperial capital overjoyed. They couldn't find any reason for Qin Feng to resist. Today he was destined to be killed or captured alive. Qin Feng slowly stood up, his eyes fearless as he faced the 3 masters. Today, even if he died, what did he have to fear? He had killed a prince, caused trouble in the imperial palace, broke through the city gates, and now fought 3 supermasters. Even if he died, he believed that many people in the imperial capital would remember him for the rest of their lives. That kind of shadow wouldn't dissipate with his death. The brilliance of life didn't lie in the dazzling achievements he made, but in the things he did. Even if it was a short life, that moment of brilliance could become eternity, illuminating the world. Some people lived for countless years but died. Some people, even if they only lived for a few years, died but still lived. Asterisk Hong Long Long. Asterisk the 3 masters attacked at the same time. Qin Feng soared into the sky, facing the 3 supreme masters head-on. Terrifying energy surged in the sky, spreading wildly. The aftermath of the 4 people's battle shook the clouds and the sky clean. There were no clouds for thousands of miles, and the sky was blue. Facing 4 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters, Qin Feng fell into a bitter battle. His body was covered in blood, and even with the Black Wing support, he couldn't wreak havoc like a bolt of lightning. He was facing 3 Supreme Masters. Whether it was combat experience or skills, they were much richer than him. Asterisk Hong. Asterisk after a fierce collision, Qin Feng was sent flying. Along the way, Tan Zong appeared and grabbed at Qin Feng. Qin Feng coldly glanced at him and stretched out his black arm. Light gathered in his claws, turning into a black energy ball that he threw out. At this moment, Tan Zong's hair stood on end, and he quickly dodged. After forcing Tan Zong back, Qin Feng didn't even have time to breathe a sigh of relief before a golden light flashed in the sky. A golden cane appeared and smashed down. Receiving this heavy blow, Qin Feng vomited blood and his body shot out like a cannonball. His body skidded across the ground for hundreds of meters before coming to a stop. Asterisk Hong Long Long. Star. Chapter 329. Strange changes. The sky was filled with rocks. Some of them weighed a few kilograms, while others weighed more than 100 kilograms. Driven by a powerful force, they were like meteorites, bringing with them a terrifying force as they smashed down on Qin Feng. Rumble. The earth shook violently as rocks fell from the sky. In an instant, dust and debris flew everywhere. When everyone saw this scene, they all secretly let out a sigh of relief. In a situation where he was heavily injured and was hit by these rocks, it was impossible for him not to die. Finally, this demon was beheaded. Everyone in the imperial capital cheered and celebrated the killing of this monster. Gong Xiaoxi's face instantly paled. Her jade-like hands covered her red lips. Her delicate body couldn't help but tremble violently. Her tears were like a kite with a broken string continuously falling down. Tan Xian and Jing Wui stared blankly at this scene. In the next second, their eyes instantly turned red. Qin Yao's eyes were lifeless. It was as if her soul had left her body. She crazily ran in that direction. She's Qin Feng's sister, a remnant of the Qin family? Elder Huang coldly glanced at Qin Yao, who was running towards the stone mountain. He coldly snorted and shot out a blast of energy, sending Qin Yao flying. The 3 super experts gathered in the sky. Their eyes coldly stared at the stone mountain that was dozens of meters high. Their expressions were cold. Sidu Ao, We should capture her alive. This way, we might be able to attract those ants from Tu Tianhui and the remnant of the Qin family." Elder Huang said with a dissatisfied tone. Situ Ao frowned slightly as he stared at the stone mountain below. His heart was unsure. He had been frustrated in front of Qin Feng before. His heart was filled with rage, so he lost some restraint when he made his move. Is he going to be smashed to death just like that? He suspiciously asked. A living Qin Feng is far more useful than a dead one. Elder Huang glanced at Situ Ao and said, "Perhaps we can use this to attack the Saint Ryuin. But if he's dead, then he's useless." The corner of Situ Ao's eyes twitched. Although he was unwilling in his heart, he did not say anything. Their battle with the Saint Ryuin had never ended. This time, the Saint Ryuin had tried their best to protect Qin Feng. This might be a good opportunity to suppress them. Moreover, the granddaughter of an old spiritual master from the Saint Ryuin was also here. With these two people, they would definitely be able to suppress the Saint Ryuin or even severely injure them. And the premise was that Qin Feng had to be alive. Moreover, the Tu Tianhui that he founded was indeed very difficult to deal with. Their strength wasn't great, but they couldn't withstand the large number of people. They were scattered far and wide, and it was very troublesome for them to make small movements from time to time. For example, this time, they didn't know how many Tu Tianhui members they had killed, but they still couldn't kill them all. They didn't know when they would appear again. By using Qin Feng, not only could they suppress the Saint Ryuin, but they could also completely eradicate this power. If this power was allowed to develop into something like the Dragon Head religion, it would definitely be a great disaster for the imperial capital. The importance of Qin Feng being alive was self-evident to them, so they didn't kill him just now. They wanted to keep him alive so that they could deal with the Saint Ryuin and Tu Tianhui in the future. If he accidentally killed Qin Feng because he gave up, then he would be guilty. After all, this time, the three of them were working together, and it wasn't a one-on-one fight. Situ Ao's expression was gloomy, and he clenched his fists tightly. Under countless gazes, the stone mountain that was dozens of meters tall didn't move at all. The monster has been killed. Countless people in the imperial capital cheered. They didn't think as much as the higher-ups. The cheers between the heavens and the earth lasted for a while before gradually dying down. Then, countless gazes turned to the stone mountain that was piled up with rocks. If the monster didn't appear soon, then it was probably really dead. The entire heavens and earth became silent. Elder Huang stood in the air, and his eyes flickered. Suddenly, he clenched his hand, and the golden walking stick instantly became 100 feet long. It carried a terrifying aura that overflowed the heavens, and with an extremely shocking posture, it fiercely smashed down on the stone mountain. Seeing this, the other two frowned their brows. They were a little doubtful, but they didn't say anything. Boom! Rocks flew into the air, and the originally collapsed ground was crushed at this moment. Boom! The golden walking stick smashed down once again, and the ground within 100 feet was completely shattered. Ferocious energy spread out, causing huge cracks to appear on the ground 100 feet away. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people sighed. Even if the monster didn't die, it would be difficult for it to survive after being smashed like that. Elder Huang didn't care about what others were thinking, and his expression was still cold. However, when the golden walking stick smashed down for the third time, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression became especially solemn. The spiritual energy fluctuations that were originally fading around him surged once again. Elder Huang's sudden appearance of being fully armed also caused countless people to be startled. Soon after, they also recovered, and their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at the shattered ground. Could it be that monster didn't die, that he could still fight? Situ Ao and Tanzong were also startled, and they sharply sensed that something was wrong. There seemed to be something slowly brewing under the ground, and it actually caused their hearts to palpitate for a moment. Boom! Under the collapsed ground, a deep sound rang out, and the golden walking stick that was smashed on top of it suddenly trembled. Boom! Boom! The trembling became more and more intense, And in the end, the golden walking stick suddenly trembled, and it actually soared into the sky, shooting directly towards Elder Huang. That brat really didn't die. Elder Huang's eyes were cold. He extended his hand, and his spiritual energy hand grabbed onto the golden walking stick. With a slight tremble, he stabilized it, and it quickly shrunk. His pair of pitch-black eyes cautiously stared at the deep, dark pit. It was the same for Situ Ao and Tanzong. Unknowingly, there seemed to be an uneasy feeling that was entrenched in their hearts. The gazes of everyone gathered over, and everyone held their breaths with their hearts in their throats. Within the bottomless pit, there was a faint black and white light that slowly spread out. After that, everyone saw a figure slowly floating up, and in the end, it gently landed on a huge rock. When that figure appeared, the sound of cold air being sucked in instantly rang out in this world. The appearance of that figure was Qin Feng. However, the current him was extremely different from before. The surface of his body was suffused with a black and white light, and on his face there was also a mysterious and strange black and white light pattern. Although the left half of his body still maintained its monstrous shape, it had already returned to its normal size. Of his two eyes, one had turned black. It was dark and deep, like a black hole that could devour everything. It was filled with an indescribable sense of mystery. The other eye, which was the left eye, was covered by a white light. It was so white that it emitted light, so white that it was dazzling, as if it was the only light source in this world. However, within this light source, there was also a smear of scarlet blooming. It was filled with a demonic feeling, causing people to not dare to look directly at it. Both of his eyes were extremely sharp and cold, and within them, there was also an endless amount of hostility. On his back, the pair of black wings had turned snow white and pitch black. The pair of wings slowly flapped, and the surrounding space quietly distorted. Both of his arms were covered by light. One of them was so black that it was shining, and the other was so white that it was dazzling. Chapter 330. Withered snow lotus in the canyon. The atmosphere was terrifyingly quiet. Everyone stared blankly at this scene, and for some reason, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Elder Huang and the other two powerhouses' expressions were still cold, as energy surged around their bodies. However, those with sharp eyes would notice that their brows were furrowed, and their hands were trembling slightly under their sleeves. As powerhouses, they could clearly sense that the current Qin Feng seemed to have become extremely strange and terrifying. Even they felt their hearts palpitate. What a shocking method, but what's the use of it? It's just a futile effort. You are destined to become a prisoner of the royal family, and you will use the rest of your life to atone for your provocation of the royal family. If you're allowed to grow for a few more years, no one will be able to subdue you. However, everything will stop today, and the rest of your life will be dealt with by the royal family. Xiao, Peng. As soon as his voice fell, a black and white light flashed in the air. Elder Huang's expression changed as he quickly raised his hands to block in front of his chest. In an instant, a terrifying force exploded in front of his chest. Elder Huang grunted as his body retreated. His arms seemed to have been dripped with sulfuric acid as white smoke rose from them. What a strange corrosive power. He frowned slightly. The current Qin Feng was not only stronger, but he also had a corrosive power. After forcing Elder Huang back, Qin Feng turned around and attacked Situ Ao. His fist and claws arrived together as black and white light exploded. Situ Ao tried his best to block, but he was still sent flying and coughed up blood. How can this brat be so terrifying? Situ Ao was shocked. Compared to before, Qin Feng's strength had more than doubled. Wind kill. Suddenly, a gust of wind rose around Tanzong as sharp wind blades shot out. Each wind blade contained an extremely powerful force that could easily pierce through any expert below the 9th stage heaven realm. The wind blades and raindrops flew towards Qin Feng, who had just forced Situ Ao back. Qin Feng didn't dodge. He didn't even turn around. The wings of black light on his back flapped. Black and white light filled the air and fused with each other, forming a yin-yang Tai Chi diagram. The Tai Chi diagram rotated slowly. Then, from the center, a withered hand reached out. At the center of the palm, there was a huge mouth that directly swallowed those sharp wind blades that could even tear space apart. Immediately after, the huge hand suddenly slapped forward. It was as if it had traversed through time and appeared before Tan's zone in an instant. So fast, the latter's expression suddenly changed, and he frantically urged his spirit energy to block the attack. Sizzle. As soon as he came into contact with it, a large area of his spiritual energy collapsed and was corroded. This made him extremely shocked. What kind of power was this that even his spiritual energy was corroded? However, he was, after all, an expert who had made a name for himself for a long time and had rich combat experience. He decisively cut off the connection between the spiritual energy and himself, and then quickly fled. This guy seems to be a little terrifying. Tan's zone was bewildered. Being called terrifying by a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master was enough to show just how troublesome Qin Feng was right now. There's no need to hold back. If we can't capture him alive, just kill him. Elder Huang's face was gloomy. Qin Feng's strength was far beyond their expectations. If they continued to hold back, it was likely that they would suffer a lot of damage. Murderous intent flashed across the three people's eyes as their fierce spirit energy roared towards Qin Feng. Before this kind of pressure even approached, the space around them couldn't bear it and collapsed. Qin Feng showed an evil smile on his face. His hands and claws came together as if he was forming a seal. The next moment, a black and white light bloomed around his body. With the eruption of this light, the setting sun seemed to lose its luster at this moment. A black and white light barrier shrouded him from above. The light flickered and rippled, stirring up layers of black and white halos that continued to spread out. At the same time, the attacks that contained their own terrifying powers smashed into the black and white light barrier. In an instant, it was as if a volcano had erupted. Extremely ferocious energy spread out, like a mushroom cloud blooming, bringing with it a destructive power. The world shook as countless people quickly retreated, worried that they would be affected. As the energy gradually dissipated, the scene inside appeared before everyone's eyes. Immediately, everyone's heart trembled. The black and white light barrier was still there and hadn't shattered. Xiao! 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 Suddenly, the light barrier shook and shot out 3 black and white light beams. At the top of the light beams, there was a yin and yang diagram that flowed with a strange power. Puchi, Elder Huang, and the other 2 masters all staggered back, suffering heavy injuries. Their faces were filled with fear. Qin Feng's strength was beyond their imagination. Elder Zhua, show yourself. Elder Huang looked in a certain direction and said. Everyone was stunned. Was there an even more powerful master coming? Just as this thought appeared in their minds, the void rippled and an old figure appeared. This old man was very old. His back was bent like a rotten tree, and his entire body emitted a rotten aura. However, when he appeared, the scene immediately quieted down. Even Elder Huang, Situ Ao, and Tanzong had respectful expressions on their faces. This showed that this person wasn't ordinary. I didn't expect things to develop to this stage, the old man said calmly. Embarrassment flashed across the faces of Elder Huang and the other 2. Little guy, come with me. If you're willing, I might be able to save your life. The old man looked at Qin Feng with a smile. His tone was calm, and he seemed to admire him. Qin Feng's eyes surged with a cold light. Without saying anything, he suddenly attacked the old man. Elder Zhua smiled and stretched out his withered palm. With a flick of his finger, a spiritual energy shot out and collided with Qin Feng. The spiritual energy seemed small, but when it exploded, it made many people's ears buzz. Puchi! Qin Feng's body trembled as he coughed up blood from the corner of his mouth. Old Zhua's old figure also trembled. Soon after, he shook his head and said, Your strength should have reached its limit. Are you trying to protect something by risking your life? Boss Zhua made a grabbing motion with his hand. Qin Yao was immediately caught and imprisoned in the air. Sister, Qin Feng's expression changed greatly. If she dies, what else do you want to protect? Elders was smiled, but his tone was cold. It was as if killing a life was easier for him than crushing an ant. As he slowly clenched his hand, Qin Yao's body violently twisted. Sister, Qin Feng desperately rushed over, but was stopped by Elder Zhua. He had no way to save Qin Yao for a while. He could only watch Qin Yao's body twist little by little. Little Feng. Qin Yao looked at Qin Feng gently. A warm and bright smile appeared on her delicate face. It was like a snow lotus slowly blooming at the top of a snowy mountain. It was pure and beautiful. Chapter 331. Tragic. Elders would gently waved his hand, and Qin Yao immediately returned to Qin Feng's direction. He pointed his finger, and a beam of light shot out. What is the meaning of your existence when you have lost the things you want to protect? Puchi. The beam of light pierced through Qin Yao's chest and shot into Qin Feng's shoulder. Dong! Qin Feng's heart seemed to have stopped beating, and a certain nerve in his mind seemed to have snapped. He stared blankly at the figure that was slowly approaching him like falling petals. Not knowing when, Qin Feng finally regained his senses. He frantically rushed out to protect Qin Yao. Ah! Qin Feng let out a long and mournful cry that spread far and wide. The heart-wrenching pain and helplessness contained in it made everyone's heart ache. Sister. Hugging Qin Yao tightly, Qin Feng roared in pain. His hoarse voice was filled with despair and desolation. Between heaven and earth, countless people looked at Qin Feng, who was roaring like a wild beast. Their hearts ached inexplicably, and they couldn't help but want to cry. No matter how big of a crime this monster had committed, the relationship between this pair of siblings was not sinful. It was the purest thing in the world. Gong Xiaoxi stood there in a daze as she stared at the roaring figure. Tears streamed down her face like a broken dam, gushing out violently. Roar! Jing Wui roared. His eyes were blood red, and blood-red spiritual energy surged out of his body. Tan Xian held the long spear in his hand, and spear light shot out. Both of you are good seedlings, but unfortunately, you chose the wrong path. The old man shook his head slightly and pressed his palm gently. Boom! A huge hand seemed to have descended from the 9 heavens, and an extremely terrifying and destructive wave of energy crazily spread out. Bang! Tan Xian and Jing Wui were both heavily injured. Their bodies smashed into the ground like cannonballs. Following 2 loud bangs, the earth shook violently. Even the distant mountain rocks rolled down, and giant trees were snapped. On the ground, 2 huge craters appeared, and dense cracks spread out from the craters. Inside the huge pit, Tan Xian and Jing Wui's breaths drifted, and their pupils gradually dilated. Although the old man had attacked, he did not directly kill the 2 of them. However, he had nearly destroyed them. If I use you, I might be able to force old Manning out. Tan Zong laughed coldly and slowly clenched his fist. Gong Xiaoxi's delicate body trembled. She pursed her lips tightly and looked at Qin Feng, who seemed to have lost his soul and was holding Qin Yao in a daze. Suddenly, the spiritual energy in her mind went berserk. The next moment, it was like a volcano that was about to explode. Self-destruct. Tan Zong shook his head and smiled. If I don't allow it, do you have the right to self-destruct? Immediately, his arm shook slightly. Gong Xiaoxi's body suddenly tensed up, and the spiritual energy that was about to explode slowly subsided. It was directly suppressed by Tan Zong's powerful spiritual energy. Ayo! A strange sound came from Big Exploding Flower's mouth. Her eyes were dark green, and dark green scales suddenly flashed on her face. She slowly bent down and supported herself on the ground with both hands. A huge tail extended from behind her, and her limbs swelled into huge hands and feet. Her sharp claws dug deep into the ground. Chi! With a muffled sound, a pair of dark green wings spread out from her back. Dark green light suddenly erupted, and accompanied by a loud roar, the scales on Big Exploding Flower's body kept flashing, starting from her neck and spreading to her whole body. On her head, the dark green light was extremely dense. Then, two horns sprouted from her scalp. The horns were dark green and curved forward. At the tip, a red light flickered. An indescribable, ferocious aura burst out. Everyone looked at Big Exploding Flower in shock. Their eyes were filled with horror. What was going on? How did the little girl turn into a monster? And it was even more complete than Qin Feng's. In any case, half of Qin Feng's body was still in human form. However, this little girl's entire body had turned into a monster. Those scales that emitted a cold light and seemed to have a metallic texture made people tremble in fear, especially that pair of green eyes. It made people feel uncomfortable, as if it was a peerless, ferocious beast. Several 9th-stage Heaven Realm powerhouses looked at the transformed Big Exploding Flower and frowned. This little girl's body is a spirit beast? She can take human form at such a young age. What kind of spirit beast is this? The old man's heart shook. He felt that this unknown spirit beast was very unusual. It made people's souls throb and feel uneasy. Even he felt a sense of horror in that instant. Although it was fleeting, he still caught it. Powerhouses at their level seemed to have an instinctive fear of this unknown spirit beast. His eyes immediately turned cold. Although he didn't know what kind of spirit beast it was, he vaguely knew that it might be extraordinary. If it really grew up, it would be a threat to them. I'll capture you first and study you. As soon as this thought fell, the old man suddenly reached out and pressed his hand down. Big Exploding Flower suddenly raised her head. Her face was covered in dense scales. Her originally rosy little mouth now had a wide mouth full of fangs. She suddenly opened her mouth and let out a strange cry. In an instant, everyone present was shocked. Then their ears buzzed and the spirit chi in their bodies stagnated. They were shocked and quickly circulated their spirit chi. Then they retreated a distance and looked at the mutated Big Exploding Flower in horror. Only a few 9th-stage Heaven Realm powerhouses could resist this strange sound wave attack. The old man's eyes flashed and he shouted. Spirit chi erupted from his hand and slowly pressed down. Big Exploding Flower roared and her huge tail covered in scales lashed out. Clang! The moment it collided with the big hand, a sharp sound of metal rang out. The spirit chi hand trembled and Big Exploding Flower was directly sent flying. What a strange power! The old man was surprised, and the light in his eyes became even brighter. He wanted to catch Big Exploding Flower and study it. Then the big hand slapped down again. Big Exploding Flower roared and kept lashing out with her tail. However, under the old man's spirit chi hand, her resistance didn't have much effect. This old man was too powerful. Even the 9th-stage Heaven Realm, he had walked very far. He had probably reached the 3rd-stage Heaven, or even the 4th-stage Heaven, or perhaps even higher. In short, whether it was the demonic Qin Feng or the mutated Big Exploding Flower, they were not his opponents. Bang! Finally, the giant spiritual energy hand fell, and the ground caved in on the spot. Rubble flew into the air, and blood seeped out from the collapsed soil, dyeing the entire area dark red. As the spirit chi hand dissipated, Big Exploding Flower's figure slowly fell under everyone's gaze. At this moment, she was in an extremely miserable state. Her whole body was covered in blood, and large patches of scales had fallen off, revealing bloody flesh. Her pair of wings were also crippled, and a section of her tail had fallen off. She suddenly opened her mouth and gathered the spirit chi of heaven and earth, condensing it into a fist-sized black energy ball, and then fiercely shot it at Tanzong. The latter coldly snorted and quickly mobilized his spirit chi. Then he shot it out and collided with the black energy ball. Chapter 332. Abandoning oneself after releasing this attack. Big Flower Explosion could not hold on any longer. The dark green light around him gradually faded, and he returned to his original appearance of a child. However, he looked much more miserable. There was not a single part of his small body that was unscathed. He was covered in scars, and his body was dripping with blood as if he had been soaked in a blood pool. Gong Xiaoxi wriggled on the ground and crawled towards Qin Feng, leaving a shocking trail of blood. Qin Feng slowly turned his head and looked at Gong Xiaoxi's pale face. His eyes were empty and his face was numb. His eyes moved slightly, and he saw Tan Xian and Jing Wui lying in the deep pit. Their eyes were dim, and their weak auras were like small boats in a raging sea that could capsize at any time. He moved again and saw a big flower explosion lying on the ground covered in blood. He tried to raise his head, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not move. Only a weak voice was carried by the breeze. "Uncle, I'm in pain. What's wrong? Are they all dead?" Qin Feng asked softly. His voice was extremely hoarse, as if he was too sad and his vocal cords were about to break. To be able to die together, perhaps this ending is not bad. Gong Xiaoxi forced a smile and said. She gently held Qin Feng's left claw. Qin Feng's face was numb, and there was no fluctuation in his eyes. He just stared blankly at Gong Xiaoxi. "Can you help me? I can't be caught by them. Otherwise, Grandpa will be in danger." Gong Xiaoxi smiled and lifted Qin Feng's claw with great effort. The sharp claw was like the sharpest thorn in the world. She aimed it at her fair neck and stabbed it down. Qin Feng's empty eyes widened. He lowered his head and stared blankly at the red claw that extended from Gong Xiaoxi's neck. After a long while, he slowly raised his head. He looked at Gong Xiaoxi. The latter's face was extremely pale, but her smile was beautiful and moving. Qin Feng had never seen it before. At this moment, it was as if the world had lost its color. "Little cutie." Qin Feng's body trembled and his eyes rippled. He slowly said, "Little fairy." Gong Xiaoxi's eyes lit up and the smile on her face was bright. Then, her clear eyes gradually dimmed and her blood-stained hands could no longer hold of Qin Feng's claw. She slowly loosened her grip. A gentle breeze blew by, bringing away some of the smell of blood. However, the pain and despair in Qin Feng's heart couldn't be brought away. "What do I have left?" His voice was extremely hoarse as he muttered. "Sai, you still reached this step. This kind of physique. In the end, you are the same as her." An evil voice suddenly sounded in Qin Feng's heart. "Ha, old devil, you've awakened?" Qin Feng spoke in a low voice. His tone was icy cold to the extreme, as though all emotions had been extinguished. His eyes gradually widened as a demonic scarlet color slowly blossomed in the depths of his eyes after a long period of silence. The demonic eye slowly said, "Do you want to give up everything and fall into evil? Isn't this what you want to see? You will be completely freed from my body." Qin Feng smiled. "I have already lost everything. What else is there to give up? In this life, I am willing to become an evil demon. I will be a mad demon for the rest of my life." Demonic eye, release all of your strength. Qin Feng released the last bit of his consciousness that was suppressing the black crystal in his qi sea. As the suppression disappeared, the black crystal began to spin and an endless evil aura flowed through his body. At the same time, the demonic eye in his right hand flashed and fused with the power of the black crystal. Scarlet color spread out from Qin Feng's eyes. Madness spread out from his limbs and bones. Evil took root in his heart. When Qin Feng's consciousness gradually blurred, he didn't see the jade pendant in front of his chest emit a weak blue light. Then it slowly spread to Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi, as if it was absorbing something. Then the two life forces that hadn't completely dissipated completely disappeared. In the jade pendant, there seemed to be two more hazy lights. They gently flickered and one or two life forces filled the air. After suppressing the flower explosion and seeing that she had lost the power to resist, the old man slightly nodded his head. Just as he was about to grab her, his heart jumped for no reason. After that, he looked at Qin Feng, who was below, with a pair of suspicious eyes. Immediately, he frowned. It was as if something had changed. Sensing the old man's gaze, Elder Huang, Tanzong, and Situ Ao were all startled. Then, they looked at Qin Feng and frowned. For some reason, a trace of uneasiness crept into their hearts. They couldn't get rid of it. Suddenly, the old man shouted, "There's something wrong with this guy." His slightly sharp voice suddenly rang out. instantly drawing everyone's attention. All the experts in the capital stared blankly at the old man, whose expression had changed slightly. They didn't understand what was going on. These people had clearly been suppressed. They were either dead or injured. What kind of threat could they pose? Why was the powerful elder's voice so serious? In the field, only Elder Huang, Situ Ao, and Tanzong seemed to have sensed something. They looked at Qin Feng with shock. Only they could sense that Qin Feng's aura had disappeared. However, there was an extremely strange aura spreading out from his body. That aura made them tremble instinctively. Countless gazes gathered on the statue-like figure. They held their breaths. For a moment, the world was silent. This silence lasted for an unknown amount of time. Then, the motionless body suddenly moved. Everyone's nerves tightened as they stared at him. Ha! Qin Feng suddenly laughed wildly. His laughter was filled with an indescribable demonic and crazy feeling. After laughing for a while, his voice gradually quieted down. He fell into a deathly silence again. This kind of silence was like a huge rock pressing down on one's heart. It made it hard for them to breathe. 1 second, 1 minute, or perhaps even longer, he slowly raised his head. His slender bangs parted, revealing a pair of emotionless eyes that were filled with dead ashes. Everyone's heart shrank. What kind of eyes were those? Demonic light flickered. Demonic eyes rippled. It was as if the owner of those eyes wasn't a human, but an evil demon. Qin Feng twisted his neck. His body seemed to be stretching as crackling sounds rang out, causing people who heard it to feel uneasy from head to toe. You asked me just now, when I lose what I want to protect, what is the meaning of my existence? Now, I can answer you. There is no meaning because I no longer need to exist. He cruelly laughed. His laughter made people's hair stand on end. You have forced me to this point. I have lost everything. What do I have left in this world? I have lost everything. Why should I hope for a fluke? From today onwards, I, Qin Feng, will abandon myself and fall into evil. His hoarse voice was like the sound of stones rubbing against each other. It made people feel uncomfortable, and their hearts couldn't help but throb. Qin Feng's consciousness gradually disappeared. Chapter 333. Evil spirit emerges. Come out, evil spirit. Let this world taste what despair is. Qin Feng suddenly spread out his arms as a crimson-black light erupted from his body. At this moment, his consciousness completely disappeared, and he could no longer perceive anything. The crimson-black light surged like an ocean, causing space to constantly collapse. This kind of power was cold, evil, and demonic, completely incompatible with this world. The spirit energy of this world became even more violent, letting out a mournful cry as if it was being eroded. Jia Jia. After so many years, I've finally broken free. This feeling is quite wonderful. From the crimson-black sea, a huge head emerged. Its surface was smooth, and there was only a single blood-red eye on it. It stared at everyone present as a bone-chilling laughter slowly rang out. The evil spirit has appeared. This world, wait for its destruction. It was difficult to describe how evil this voice was. It was strange and demonic, and when it entered one's ears, it was as if one's emotions would follow it, and they would give up everything to follow it and fall into the endless darkness. Wake up, Boss Swa shouted, and a vigorous spirit energy wrapped around his voice as it resounded. Aside from the 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters, everyone present trembled and regained their senses. They looked at the crimson-black sea in horror, their hearts filled with extreme fear. What the hell was this? Just its voice had almost caused them to fall. Everyone, leave his place. Elder Huang shouted. He knew that they had encountered big trouble this time. A terrifying creature that had never existed in this primitive world had appeared. Everyone quickly retreated, not daring to stay any longer. This kind of existence was too terrifying. Just its voice alone was so frightening. If it really attacked, it would destroy the world. Can the 4 seniors subdue that demon? Someone asked, his heart trembling. Everyone's faces were ugly. They didn't know if the 4 ninth stage Heaven Realm Masters could deal with that demon, but looking at their dignified expressions, it wouldn't be so easy. As everyone retreated, the place suddenly became empty. Within the scarlet-black ocean, the unique scarlet-red eyes of the Blackhead were suffused with a monstrous, demonic power, causing the entire sky to distort. This was an extremely terrifying and mysterious power that caused the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to go berserk and distort the sky. In the distorted space, Elder Zwa and the other 3 looked extremely solemn. The power of distortion was so terrifying that even they couldn't bear it. The 4 of them gathered together, and the vigorous spiritual power in their bodies burst out, shattering the power of distortion. Then they attacked at the same time, and the extremely fierce spiritual power slammed downward. The black monster cackled, and the crimson-black ocean suddenly churned with monstrous waves, meeting the attack head-on. It turned into a large black hand covered with crimson lines and slapped out. Humph! Elder's body trembled, and the arm hidden in his sleeves trembled slightly. Elder Huang, Situ Ao, and Tan Zong staggered back, blood flowing from the corners of their mouths. In this attack, they suffered different degrees of injuries. How can this monster be so strong? Elder Huang said with a trembling voice. The combined attack of the 4 of them was actually easily neutralized by the other party. Not only that, the other party even had the strength to injure them. This world shall be destroyed. The crimson-black ocean rumbled, and it was like a hurricane rolling up the sea. Waves of shocking waves slammed into the sky, and under that power, the sky shattered bit by bit, unable to bear it. Elder Huang and the other 2 retreated, and their faces were extremely ugly. Elders formed a seal with his hands, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered towards him. Spiritual light flickered around his body, and his figure became illusory. Evil's suppressing hand. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and he lightly shouted. A large golden hand, flowing with Buddhist light, seemed to have descended from the 9 heavens, and suppressed the monster in the crimson-black ocean below. Roar! Roar! In the crimson-black ocean, monstrous waves surged, and like a tsunami, it swept out in all directions, directly attacking the large golden hand. The moment the 2 collided, the invisible space distorted and then collapsed. It was silent, but there was a terrifying shockwave that made Elder Huang and the other 2 people's hearts palpitate. This world will finally submit to the evil spirit. The black monster laughed and let out a hair-raising sound. Then, the crimson-black ocean shook and violently rolled, as if something was about to rush up from the bottom of the sea. Whoosh! A light burst out and hit the large golden hand. The large golden hand shook unsteadily, and then was sent flying. Poochie! Elder's voice staggered back, and his face was filled with horror. He hurriedly shouted, "This monster is too terrifying. Hurry up and leave. Submit to the evil spirit and become its nourishment." At this moment, the sky and earth distorted, and blood bloomed on Elder Huang and the other 2 people. They suffered a great blow, and even Elder Zwa let out a muffled groan. Obviously, he was no match for the monster in the crimson-black ocean. Boom! A large black hand reached out and entered the distorted space. Suddenly, blood burst out, and the large hand became bloody, and then quickly retreated. What's going on? What is this? A frightened voice came from the direction of the large black hand. This was the 5th super powerhouse of the 9th heaven realm. He had just rushed over and didn't know the specific situation of the black monster, so he recklessly attacked and almost suffered heavy injuries. This monster is not simple. Be careful, elders were reminded, and then he kept retreating and blood bloomed on his body. What an evil power! Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distorted space. It was a middle-aged man with a dignified face, and his eyes burst out with light. He was very strong, and he stood in the distorted space without being injured. "You? Where are you from?" the man asked. "Kiki, a good ingredient has come." The black monster let out an unpleasant laugh. Roar! The crimson-black ocean exploded, and it was like a primal chaos ancient demon that was excavated from the beginning of time. Its killing intent was overflowing, and it poured into the ninth heaven. It was overbearing and tragic. Kill! A huge black shadow appeared, and it was about to squeeze the world. It just appeared and slapped at the man, and at the same time, energy raged, distorting the world. You're still incomplete. Do you think I'm afraid of you? The man was also very strong, and he just went up to meet it. His fist glowed, and the golden light reversed the universe, as if it was going to obliterate time and space. The void was being annihilated, crushed by a pair of golden fists, colliding with a large black hand and entangling with various peerless techniques. It shook violently. Roar! The black monster was furious, and it erupted with endless energy. The entire sky was distorted to the extreme. Space was broken inch by inch, and that was a powerful force intercepting and forcibly dividing it into small worlds. It wanted to divide this person. However, this person was too strong. His whole body surged with dazzling golden light, and he stood there like an immortal golden giant without being divided. Then, like a river bursting a dike, great Tao fragments covered the sky and earth. That was the peak collision of supreme powerhouses, and it completely submerged this place. The battle was bitter. Although this person was boundlessly tyrannical, he was already covered in blood, and he was enduring a terrifying pressure. He had encountered an extraordinary opponent. Chapter 334. How dare you bully my child? The entire sky was violently distorting. Elder Zhua, Situ, Ao, Elder Huang, and the others had already retreated from the battlefield. The battle here had already exceeded what they could endure. What is going on? How can that brat have such powerful strength? Situ Ao cursed angrily. His eyes were clearly filled with fear. If he had encountered such power at the beginning, he would have definitely died. This shouldn't be his power. Perhaps there is a terrifying monster living in his body. Huang Zhila's eyes flickered as he said this. At this moment, the battle was becoming more and more intense. The enormous black figure that almost filled half the sky and the golden-robed expert were fiercely fighting. The space was obliterated by the two's attacks. Fragments of the great Tao danced about. Time and space trembled as if this world was going to be shattered. Extremely terrifying, destructive energy surged unhindered there, strangling everything. The golden-robed figure's expression became more and more serious. When he attacked, golden light blossomed. All kinds of powerful battle skills and techniques were blasted out. The black figure roared. He didn't use any special techniques, but the black mist surged, intimidating and extremely terrifying power. How long? In the end, the golden-robed figure was sent flying and coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. Unfortunately, my power hasn't completely recovered, the black figure said helplessly. Elder Zhua, Elder Huang, and the others all surrounded him. This monster is terrifyingly powerful. Moreover, his power is still growing. Only my brother and a few others can suppress him. The golden-robed figure spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was gloomy. But my brother and the others will need some time to rush over. I'm afraid we might not be able to hold on until then. Hearing this, Elder Huang and the others were all shocked. He said, Prince Cheng, could it be that even if we work together, we are still not his opponent? Prince Cheng shook his head and said, Our lives are not important. If we can suppress this monster, even if we die, so what? The key is that this monster is still recovering. Once it reaches the peak, I'm afraid that even if all the experts of the primitive land work together, they won't be his opponent. If we can't kill him today, I'm afraid that the primitive land will no longer exist. Hearing his words, Elder Huang and the others were all shocked. Was the situation already so grim? They looked at the black monster, fear rising in their hearts. Jiejia, despair. Submit. The black monster walked over. Behind it, the raging sea slammed against the shore, and the sky continuously collapsed. All of a sudden, it stopped in its tracks. Immediately after, the scarlet-black ocean around it began to recede, and its increasingly tyrannical power also began to weaken bit by bit. Noticing this scene, Prince Cheng, Elder Huang, and the others were all stunned. What was going on? Why was the other party's strength rapidly weakening? Damn it, you stubborn bastard. Do you think that you alone can suppress me? The black monster roared, and the ocean showed signs of rolling again. However, at this moment, a white light suddenly rose up. It was like a huge halo that tightly grasped the black monster. As the light bloomed, the monstrous black gas dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. This is that woman? The black monster roared, extremely unwilling to give up. Old thing, even if you use her power, you can't stop me. Her child already has evil in his heart, and the seed of evil has been planted. One day, he will completely turn evil, and at that time, I will break free from all restraints. You won't be able to stop the invasion of the demons. The black monster gradually shrank, and its strength rapidly declined. At this moment, Prince Cheng, Elder Huang, and the others quickly made their moves. As the saying goes, take the enemy's life when it's weak. This was the best opportunity. They wanted to completely kill this monster. Terrifying energy erupted like a vast ocean, surging violently, and energy beams burst forth. Rumble. The heaven and earth shook violently, and the sky continued to shatter. The space exploded, and the destructive energy madly spread out. Prince Cheng and the others stared closely at the violent energy, squinting their eyes. That intense light did not hinder them at all. Under their gazes, the energy there gradually calmed down. Immediately after, their eyes focused, and they revealed a strange expression. There was a white light blooming there, and a hazy figure appeared. They could not see her face, but that noble aura, the temperament of a fairy, was completely exposed. She just stood there, and it made people feel ashamed of their inferiority. Prince Cheng and the others frowned. They did not understand what was going on. Wasn't the black monster lured out by Qin Feng? Why did another woman appear? The black monster's strength weakened because of this woman. They did not dare to act rashly because they did not know what to do. The hazy woman, shrouded in light, was half squatting in the void. Qin Feng, who had lost consciousness, was lying in the woman's arms. The latter hugged Qin Feng tightly, and spiritual light constantly slid down her face. Those were her tears. My child, you've suffered. It's all my fault. I didn't take good care of you and let you bear so much alone. It's all my fault, the woman said softly. Her voice was so gentle that it seemed to be able to melt 10,000-year-old ice. She gently hugged Qin Feng, and spiritual light and tears flowed down like a broken dam. Prince Cheng and the others looked serious. This woman was Qin Feng's mother? How could this be? They had already thoroughly investigated Qin Feng's background. It was a very small family, and there were no outstanding figures. His mother was also an ordinary person, but this woman in front of them seemed to be extraordinary. Fellow Taoist, this is an important criminal of our royal family. Please let us deal with him. The royal family will definitely reward you greatly, Prince Cheng said with a slightly gentler tone. Because he could not see through this woman's depth, there was no need to be too forceful and provoke a powerful enemy. The woman slowly raised her head. Her face was blurry, and two substantial cold lights shot out. You dare to bully my child? You're all courting death, the woman said coldly. Her palm lightly slapped out, and in an instant, crystal light flashed crazily. Heaven grade spiritual power master. Such terrifying spiritual power. The expressions of Elder Huang and the rest changed drastically. They could sense the scent of death from the crystal-colored mental energy that filled the sky. Even Prince Cheng's expression changed. This energy was even stronger than the black monster from before. Spiritual power was extremely difficult to cultivate. In this primitive land, there was no spiritual power master of this level. Who exactly was this woman? Prince Cheng was shocked. He gathered everyone's strength and barely resisted this attack. Elder Huang, Elder Zhua, and the others coughed up blood. Prince Chung did not have it easy either. The blood in his body was surging, but it was suppressed by his powerful spiritual power, so he did not vomit blood. "Girl, you don't have much strength left. Accompany him well." Just as the woman was about to continue attacking, an old voice suddenly sounded. This voice was exactly the same as Mo Yan's. The woman paused for a moment, then picked up Qin Feng. With a wave of her hand, Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the big flower explosion were swept up. Then, she turned into a beam of light and shot out. Chapter 335. Single teardrop. This day was the most depressing day in the capital. The sky was gloomy and dark clouds covered the sky, just like the mood of some people. Not only the capital, but the entire primitive land was like this. Everyone felt stifled and suffocated. Who would have thought that the capital would still let Qin Feng escape after mobilizing such a powerful force? Moreover, there were countless casualties. The capital had already sealed off the news of that battle because it was too humiliating. How many minor heaven realm experts had they sent to deal with a few spirit-detecting brats? Assassin organizations, spiritual organizations, and various large clans had all been mobilized. There were even a few ninth-layer heaven realm experts. In the end, the devil was not caught, but they had suffered heavy casualties. All the prominent clans in the capital felt humiliated, and the imperial family felt even more so. 6 of the 8 princes had been killed, but the other party had still managed to escape from their encirclement time and time again. This was a huge blow to the capital and the imperial family. It could be said that they had lost all face. It was a humiliation they had never experienced before. The imperial family style had always been to punish those who were far away, but this time, someone had brazenly provoked them, killed their princes, and caused havoc in the capital. In the end, they had still managed to leave safely. Without a doubt, the people's reverence for the capital had decreased quite a bit, because even if they sealed off the news, they could not completely cut it off. That battle had caused too much of a commotion, and the experts of the St. Ryuan had been paying attention to Qin Feng. It was impossible for them not to know anything about him. Qin Feng had once again escaped from the capital's encirclement. The St. Ryuan naturally wanted to make a big fuss about this matter and suppress the prestige of the capital. Continue to search. As long as he hasn't left the capital, find him even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground. This was the first and last order from the capital. That was to find Qin Feng at all costs. Some of the insiders sighed and did not have much hope. At that time, many experts from the capital had rushed over and followed the traces, but they had not found anything. If even those experts had not found anything, what could the subordinates find? The capital was only doing this to maintain their dignity. In a mountain forest extremely far away from the capital, there was a gentle flickering light that enveloped Qin Feng's body. Beside him stood a hazy figure. After a while, the woman let out a sigh of relief. She saw a white pattern appear on Qin Feng's right palm. As the light filled the air, the black qi that had seeped out slowly retreated. Finally, the white pattern disappeared, and Qin Feng's palm returned to normal. "Girl, it's been hard on you." Suddenly, an elderly voice sounded. Immediately, a figure floated out. This was an elder whose figure was transparent. He was dressed in black robes and had white hair. He was extremely aged, and on his face was a loving smile. "Qin Feng, Qin Feng, hey." The old man smiled and said, "You sealed me in his body. Do you want me to live an ordinary life like him?" She shook her head and sighed. "I don't want my child to experience that pain. I only want him to live a peaceful life. Living on this land, does he have the right to choose a peaceful life?" The old man shook his head. He looked at the woman and said, "If that's the case, why did you put in so much effort to send that baby girl into the Qin family with Qin Feng? Little girl, you and I both know that as the descendant of the slaves of this land, as your descendant, he will either open up a great path that leads to the heavens through thistles and thorns, or he will die on the path. A plain and simple life doesn't suit him at all. It was destined from the moment he was born. Do you want him to experience the pain that I experienced? That path is too difficult to walk. How many heroes have fallen on that path? The injustice that has been covered in dust for countless years. Who can uncover it? That bloody crime cannot be allowed to be exposed. The woman sighed. This is his responsibility. He has the obligation to do it. He doesn't do it because he has succeeded. The old man shook his head and said, and I don't think he will be inferior to you in the future. Girl, your son is not simple. Compared to you, your brother, and the others in the past, he is not inferior. I have never doubted my child's talent, but at this point, the woman's face showed deep worry. His demonic evil seed has been activated. The power of the curse has already taken effect on him. As the descendant of the cursed, he will face crueler things in the future. Teacher, why don't you stop him? The old man sighed and shook his head. He said, Girl, do you still not understand? He wants to wash away the injustice of his ancestors. He wants to break the curse. Sooner or later, he will face all of this. It is unavoidable. For him now, it might be a test. Didn't he pass all the tests that I set for him with the demon eye? The old man said, Back then, I thought that if he could not accept the demonized demon contract, I would protect him for life until I died of old age. But in the end, he accepted it and did very well. As the descendant of the cursed, the demonic evil seed cannot be avoided unless he can be at ease and be an ordinary person. The woman sighed and did not say anything. She only looked gently at Qinfeng. Her eyes were filled with deep helplessness and bitterness. There is no space for him to live in this land. I will use the last of my strength to bring him out. No. The old man hurriedly stopped her and said in a deep voice, Girl, he has his own path to walk. You shouldn't make arrangements for him. You can resolve his crisis this time, but what about next time and the time after that? Let him face all of this himself. His path to growth needs these stepping stones. The woman sighed softly. The spiritual light in her palm gradually dissipated. Teacher, help me take care of him. Unless it is beyond his ability, I will not do anything. Otherwise, it will only destroy his wolfish nature, the old man said. After a pause, he said, Seal me in the demon eye. Although you have suppressed it, I still need to be on guard all times. Moreover, I will continue to use the identity of the demon eye to supervise his growth. The woman nodded. White light filled the air and surrounded the old man. Then it turned into a white light and shot into Qinfeng's palm. Teacher, I am free. Don't worry. After a pause, a deep voice came from Qinfeng's palm. Girl, you should also let yourself go. The mistake back then was not caused by you. They also don't want to see you like this now. The woman smiled bitterly. After causing such a big tragedy, could she really wash her hands of it? Now, I don't ask for anything. I just want my child to be well. In the end, the woman's figure slowly dissipated. A teardrop fell slowly, turned into a transparent bead, and fell into Qinfeng's hand. Xiaofeng, wake up. You still have a long way to go. There seemed to be a soft, sorrowful voice. Under the influence of the wind, it slowly disappeared. Chapter 336. The demonic eyes shocked Qinfeng slowly open his eyes. His eyes were filled with confusion as he stared blankly at the blue sky. Suddenly, he sat up. The confusion in his eyes was replaced by boundless coldness and sharpness. His sharp eyes scanned the surroundings. At the same time, the spiritual power in his body and the spiritual power in his mind were ready to be unleashed. However, to his surprise, nothing abnormal happened. His surroundings were quiet. Suddenly, his eyes focused. He saw Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and Big Flower Explosion lying not far away. Qinfeng's heart contracted fiercely. A throbbing pain assaulted him, almost suffocating him. He trembled as he looked at the three of them. He did not dare to go over. He was worried that an unacceptable outcome would occur. He had already lost his sister and Gong Xiaoxi. Was he going to lose these three too? In the end, Qinfeng mustered up his courage and walked towards the three of them. On the way, he kept praying, hoping that they were still alive. As he approached the three of them, Qinfeng carefully checked for a while. Then, he heaved a sigh of relief. Their breathing was relatively stable. Nothing had happened as he had imagined. There was no need to worry about the three of them. Qin Feng also heaved a sigh of relief. He sat to the side dejectedly. His heart was filled with grief. His sister was dead. They had just been reunited, but they were separated by life and death. Gong Xiaoxi was also dead. She died by his own hands. Qin Feng was extremely upset. How was he going to face Ying Yuan, who had taught him so carefully in the future? At this moment, Qin Feng felt extremely tired. He had lost hope in life. The most important people were dead. What else could he do? He had once vowed to become very strong to protect his family and his sister. But now, his family had been destroyed and his sister had been killed. For a moment, he was at a loss. He did not know what to do. Why am I still alive? Qin Feng's expression was one of agony as he mumbled in a daze. He had clearly given his body to the demonic eye. Logically speaking, he should have died. But why was he still alive? Why? Once the demonic eye took over his body, shouldn't his consciousness disappear? Why am I not dead? Qin Feng looked at his palm. You're lucky to have let me out. Do you think I'm invincible in the face of so many enemies? Defeating them consumed most of my strength, so I can no longer control your body and maintain the demon contract. I can only release your consciousness. The voice of the demon eye suddenly sounded, seemingly a little exasperated. Qin Feng stared blankly for a moment before smiling bitterly. In the past, he was most afraid of the demon eye taking over his body, but now he was extremely eager for the demon eye to do so. In the end, due to a freak combination of factors, he had avoided this calamity. The heavens really like to play jokes on people. Qin Feng's eyes were lifeless, and he looked very dispirited. For the sake of your body in the future, I can't let you continue to be depressed like this. The demon eye paused for a moment before suddenly changing the topic. Look at the jade pendant on your chest. Qin Feng remained indifferent. Your sister and that girl, Gong Xiaoxi, are not dead yet. The demon eye said helplessly. At this moment, Qin Feng's body stiffened, and then a dazzling light burst out from his eyes. He almost pinched his right palm as he asked excitedly, Old demon, what did you say? My sister and Gong Xiaoxi are not dead. But at that time, what the eyes see is not necessarily true. The demon eye interrupted Qin Feng and said, At that time, I couldn't take over your body anyway, so I used the last of my strength to protect their vitality and sealed it in your jade pendant. At the same time, I also healed the injuries of the three people. Hearing this, Qin Feng hurriedly picked up the jade pendant and stared at it carefully. At a certain moment, his pupils contracted. In the jade pendant, he vaguely saw two blurry balls of light with wisps of vitality spreading out. If he didn't sense it carefully, he wouldn't be able to detect it at all. Moreover, his mental strength could clearly sense that there was a trace of mental strength fluctuation in the jade pendant, and this fluctuation belonged to Gong Xiaoxi. This was enough to prove that the demon eye didn't lie to him. However, they were already physically dead at that time, so I could only seal their vitality. If you want to revive them in the future, you will have to rely on your own efforts. Qin Feng nodded vigorously. As long as they were not dead and had a chance to be revived, that was enough. Even if he had to go to the ends of the earth, he would revive them. How about it? Do you still want to die now? The demon eye laughed. Qin Feng rolled his eyes and couldn't be bothered to argue with it. His sister didn't die, Gong Xiaoxi didn't die, and the other three didn't have any problems either. They were all still alive. To Qin Feng, this was undoubtedly great news. Hurry up and wake those three guys up. This place is not safe. You must leave the primitive land. Do you still remember the previous plan? The demon eye said. Qin Feng nodded. Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi were still alive. This made the weak desire to survive in his heart suddenly become stronger, even stronger than before. Only when you lose something will you know how precious it is. And he had lost something before. He didn't want to suffer that feeling a second time. Qin Feng calmed his mood, paused for a moment, and suddenly asked, Old devil, there's a terrible existence in the 9 spiritual mountain range. It wants me to take it away from here. Do you think it's possible? Since the demon eye had already awakened, Qin Feng felt that it was necessary to tell it about this matter. After all, he had no interaction with the existence in the 9 spiritual mountain range. The latter had helped him purely to use him to leave this place. As for what kind of attitude it would have towards him in the future, Qin Feng didn't know. It saved me before, and even helped me find the ancient desolate spirit flame. However, I feel that it wanted me to take it away, so it deliberately showed some goodwill and gave me some benefits. After pausing for a moment, Qin Feng added, "The first time we met, it wanted to attack me. However, it seemed to have sensed your existence and didn't make a move. Is it very powerful?" The demon I paused for a moment, then said, "Let's go take a look first." It had only awakened later, so it didn't know what Qin Feng had come into contact with in the 9 spiritual mountain range. Therefore, it didn't dare to determine the purpose of that existence. However, it was actually able to help you find the ancient desolate spirit flame. This kind of spiritual fire is rare in the world. Countless experts covet it. It can help you, unless it can obtain something more useful from you than the ancient desolate spirit flame. You have to be careful when you come into contact with this guy. The demon, I reminded. Qin Feng coughed and said, "I'm wrong. It's a seed flame of the ancient desolate spirit flame. More or less, even if it's just a seed flame, it can evolve into the true ancient desolate spirit flame in the future." The demon, I said. Qin Feng nodded, paying more attention to the existence in the 9 spiritual mountain range. After a moment of silence, he said, "Old devil, do you know about the yellow spring pill?" At this time, the demon I was silent for a moment, then asked in a shocked tone, "Boy, don't tell me you found the yellow spring pill." Not only did I find it, but I also refined it into my body like the ancient desolate spirit flame. Qin Feng smiled. At this moment, a large amount of black mist shook out from his palm. Chapter 337. The origin of yin-yang technique in the dense forest. Black mist surged violently. After a long while, it gradually returned to Qin Feng's palm. "Brat, your luck is too good. Not only did you refine the ancient desolate spiritual flame, but you also obtained the underworld elixir." As the demon I spoke, he suddenly paused and said in shock, "You refined the ancient desolate spiritual flame and the underworld elixir? That's not right. These 2 types of energy are polar opposites. How can they exist in the same body?" "That's because I've already activated the yin-yang force in my body," said Qin Feng. The demon I was shocked. "You've activated the yin-yang force? Let me see it." Hearing this, Qin Feng mobilized the yang qi and yin qi in his qi si. A moment later, in his hands, a white spirit energy jumped like a flame. It was visible to the naked eye that the space around the white spirit energy was constantly twisting. As for his other palm, black spiritual energy filled the air as boundless cold air rose from it. Specks of white crystals appeared in the air. The 2 palms slowly moved closer to each other. Suddenly, the black and white spiritual energy vibrated and released a strong repulsive force. In an instant, Qin Feng's palm was shaken open and blood flowed out. He stared at the black and white spiritual energy without blinking. His heart was ruthless. He ignored the repulsive force and fiercely compressed them together. In that battle, he roughly understood what the yin-yang force was. Qin Feng took this opportunity to completely understand it. His palms were separated by a palm's width. The black and white spiritual energy were like 2 beasts that couldn't tolerate each other as they tore and devoured each other. Every time they came into contact, the space would distort and Qin Feng's body would constantly tremble from the confrontation between the 2. Finally, his body gradually stabilized because he had found the feeling and understood what the yin-yang force was. He no longer forced the 2 spiritual energy to come closer. Instead, he felt the inexplicable fluctuations produced by the confrontation between the black and white spiritual energy. At a certain moment, Qin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. There were black and white lights circling his eyes at the same time. After a dozen seconds, they slowly disappeared. At the same time, Qin Feng's palms suddenly clasped together. After a while, they slowly separated. In his palms, The black and white spiritual energy were like two small black and white tadpoles, head and tail hugging each other. A strange fluctuation was emitted. Kid, you've actually used the yin-yang force to this extent. At this moment, the demon I was really shocked. The yin-yang force was too mysterious. Since ancient times, not many people had been able to completely control it. But Qin Feng had been able to do it in a few years. Old devil, do you know what yin-yang technique is? Qin Feng stared at the yin-yang embrace diagram in his hands and asked, "This move is indeed the yin-yang force." The demonic I was silent for a moment before replying. Everyone has this technique, because as long as one is a living being, they carry the power of yin and yang to balance themselves. However, the power of yin and yang is too ethereal, and there is no way to control it. Or rather, this technique has been severed. However, once the yin and yang in the body are activated, the yin-yang technique will automatically manifest. Kid, how did you cultivate the yin-yang force? Qin Feng nodded silently when he heard this. He finally understood why Qin Wentian suddenly obtained the yin-yang art. After a moment of silence, he said, "I've only managed to sense the yin-yang in my body in a place filled with good fortune." Impossible. It's impossible to make the yin-yang force in the human body appear, let alone the yin-yang force. The demon I said with certainty, there are some special energies that carry the yin-yang force. However, they can only resonate with the yin-yang force at a certain point of balance. It's impossible to control it. What if I was cultivating the water god technique and the fire god technique? The demon I paused and said in surprise, You got the fire god technique? Qin Feng nodded. I was just lucky. TSK, TSK. The demon I was speechless. He didn't know what to say. This guy's luck was too good. The 5 elements technique had been incomplete for a long time. This guy, on the other hand, got 2 in a few years. Water is yin, fire is yang. It's reasonable that you can control the yin-yang force in your body. The demon I nodded and sighed. I didn't expect you to experience so much in these few years. The fire god technique, ancient spiritual desolate flame, yellow spring pill. It's really amazing. Qin Feng thought about it. He originally wanted to tell the demon I about the inheritance of the Dark Tower. However, he changed his mind. He and the demon I were still enemies. He couldn't tell him everything. Let me see the power of your yin-yang force. The demon I said. Qin Feng nodded and flicked his finger. The yin-yang embrace dart shot out. Under his control, it didn't have much destructive power. It just gently hugged a tree. In an instant, that part of the tree trunk was corroded. Then, the big tree that the two of them could barely hug collapsed because its roots had been completely corroded. What a powerful corrosive power. The demon I sighed. Qin Feng smiled. He had finally comprehended the concept of yin and yang coexisting, manifesting the yin and yang form. This corrosive energy was even more terrifying than before. It seems that you have grown a lot in these few years. Qin Feng nodded. Indeed, he had grown a lot in these few years. He was no longer the rookie who needed the demon eye's protection. By the way, have you sensed that there is another demon eye in this world? Qin Feng suddenly asked. The demon I was silent for a long time before he said, Indeed, I have come into contact with it twice. I had already woken up the second time. Boy, you'd better not come into contact with that girl. I can only seal that evil power for 10 years. After 10 years, it will erupt. You won't be able to save that girl. The demon I warned. Qin Feng's expression froze. He slowly clenched his fist. After a long time, he slowly released it. There were still 10 years. Who knew how much he would grow in 10 years? He was confident that he could resist the demon I in Lucio Saishua's body by then. You had already woken up by then? Qin Feng was stunned. He immediately scolded. Then why didn't you take action earlier? Would these things still happen? If you needed my help for everything, would you still need to grow? Do you only want to become strong because you want to protect your family and your sister? If you don't have these, don't you have other pursuits in life? The demon I said with a stern tone. You have to walk your own path. Don't expect others to pave the way for you. Others can help you for a while, but they can't help you forever. Qin Feng was silent for a while before he nodded and said with a smile, "Old demon, to be honest, I don't really admire you. However, I agree with what you said. Hoping for others is what a coward does. You have to protect the important things yourself. You can't rely on others." Qin Feng clenched his fist and said softly, "I don't want to experience that kind of situation a second time." "Very good. The demon," I said, "it's time to leave. The road ahead won't be easy." Chapter 338. 9 Nethersnake. Qin Feng walked toward the three of them and checked them. He found that they were only unconscious and that there was nothing wrong with their bodies. Qin Feng woke them up one by one and found that they had fallen into a very strange kind of sleep. It took him a lot of effort to wake them up. "Qin Feng, we're not dead yet." Jing Wui opened his eyes and saw Qin Feng. He was shocked and quickly jumped up. Then he revealed a strange expression. He had been seriously injured and was on the verge of death, but now he was completely fine. Tanxian was also surprised when he woke up. They had almost died and had been swept away by the black wave, losing consciousness. He thought they were dead, but he didn't expect them to still be alive. Moreover, they were alive and well. "Not only are we fine, but our strength has also increased a lot." Tanxian moved around and revealed a look of shock. Qin Feng nodded. They had all reached the late stage of the spirit detecting realm, and he didn't know why they had increased. He only knew what had happened later from the mouth of the demon eye. "Qin Feng, how did we survive?" Tanxian looked at Qin Feng and asked. Qin Feng didn't know how to explain, so he vaguely said, "Perhaps it was the people from the St. Ryu Inn." Tanxian and Jing Wui didn't say more. No matter what, they hadn't died, their bodies were fine, and their strength had increased quickly. That was enough. "Uncle, I'm hungry." This was the first thing Big Flower Explosion said when she opened her eyes and saw Qin Feng. Qin Feng smiled and rubbed Big Flower Explosion's head. He felt a bit of heartache. This matter had nothing to do with her, but she had been dragged into it in the end. In particular, when she had shouted, "I'm in pain," Qin Feng's heart had ached. No matter what, Big Flower Explosion was still a child. "Okay." Qin Feng went to hunt a spirit beast nearby and roasted it. After a hearty meal, they set off towards the 9 Spirits mountain range. In less than half a day, they entered the valley. Qin Feng asked them to wait outside. No matter what, the 9 Spirit mountain range was a forbidden zone for all living beings. He had only been able to enter because of special circumstances. As for the others, Qin Feng didn't want them to take the risk. After entering the forest of the 9 Spirits mountain range, Qin Feng found that existence. "Are you leaving?" Suddenly, an indifferent voice sounded. Qin Feng nodded and said, "I will fulfill my promise and take Senior away." The gloomy aura in the forest was oppressive. Black fog rolled, and a blurry figure appeared, reflecting a pair of emotionless and cold eyes. A chill rose in Qin Feng's heart. This was the first time he had seen the true body of this existence. This caused his heart to tremble. Even though he knew that this existence would not harm him, he still could not suppress the fear in his heart. After all, this was a place where humans didn't dare to set foot in. It was known as a forbidden zone for life. Even if he had to deal with this person and helped him a few times, this kind of person wasn't easy to come into contact with. However, he wasn't worried. After all, the demonic I had already awakened. That demonic fluctuation must be related to you, the existence in the black fog said. Qin Feng was stunned, but soon understood. He was referring to the time when he had been possessed. Thus, he nodded but didn't say anything. It is indeed a very evil power. There is only an evil heart and no evil power. The key is how to use this power. Qin Feng's right hand was covered in black light as the demonic eye spoke. "You've already awakened?" The existence revealed a puzzled expression. The demonic eye smiled and said strangely, "What kind of deal did you make with this brat? You even told him about the ancient, desolate spiritual flame. You are after something big." It's just a casual move. Why are you lodging in his body?" "My goal is different from yours," the demonic eye said with a smile. "Is that so?" The existence snorted. The demonic eye released a dark light and slowly revolved in Qin Feng's palm. Feeling that the atmosphere was not right, Qin Feng quickly contacted the demonic eye secretly. "Old devil, what's the situation? I'm afraid this guy has other plans for you." "Brat, be careful," the demonic eye said. Qin Feng was stunned. These two old monsters, one coveted his body, and the other had great plans for him. This gave Qin Feng a headache. What kind of things did he come into contact with? "Do you know what his goal is?" Qin Feng asked in his heart. "I'm not sure yet, but in my opinion, it shouldn't be anything good," the demonic eye replied. This caused Qin Feng to be shocked. Because of the ancient, desolate spiritual flame, Qin Feng's impression of this existence had improved by quite a bit. However, after the reminder of the demonic eye, he realized that he was still too naive. When dealing with this kind of old monster, he had accidentally thrown himself into the mix. "What do we do now? Ignore him?" Qin Feng asked. "You decide for yourself." Qin Feng was silent for a moment, then said in his heart, "No matter what plans he has for me, at least he won't show it at this stage. So, I'm safe for the time being. He might be of use in the 100,000 Barren Mountains, and I promised him before. You've grown a lot and can analyze problems." The demonic eye nodded and said, "This guy's target might not be you." Hearing this, Qin Feng let out a sigh of relief. He stepped forward and said, "Senior, I'm going to leave this place. According to our previous agreement, I've come to take you away from the primordial land." "I'm not asking you to take me away." The existence shook his head. After a long silence, a palm-sized black coffin flew out. "Take it and leave." Qin Feng was startled. Looking at the mini coffin floating in front of him, he said, "Senior, want me to take this thing away?" "Nine Nether Snake." The demonic eye was also startled. "Nine Nether Snake, what's that?" Qin Feng asked in his heart. "Good stuff? At least it's good stuff for you." The demonic eye replied to Qin Feng, then said with a laugh, "You gave the Nine Nether Snake to this brat. I really can't see through your plans. This wind of his is very strong. Forming this good karma today might be of great benefit to me in the future," the existence replied. "Is it worth spending so much capital for the sake of a better future? It's just a casual game of chess. It's not like I haven't played it before, but it was all wasted in the end." The existence in the darkness sighed and said, "As an existence like me, there's nothing I can't do." The demonic eye remained silent for a while, then said, "Maybe you're right. Maybe. I hope this wind won't stop so easily. But with you here, I think the situation will be different in the future." Qin Feng was confused by the conversation between the two. What was going on? Were the conversations of experts always so profound? "Let's go," the demonic eye said. Just like that, Qin Feng was stunned. It was so simple. He looked at the existence in the darkness and moved his mouth. "That light won't harm you, and I won't provoke that old monster on your body. Let's go." The existence seemed to know what Qin Feng was thinking. Chapter 339. Heaven Mountain City. After meeting up with Tan Xian and the others, the four of them did not stop at all. They quickly made their way to the border. The 100,000 Barren Mountains were boundlessly vast. The beast race that posed the greatest threat to the primitive world lived there, but no one knew just how many species of beast there were. In order to defend against the invasion of the beast race, the capital had set up many checkpoints on the border with a large number of soldiers. Heaven Mountain Pass was to the south of the capital, where two mountain ranges intersected. Due to the environment, it had become a natural stronghold that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Extremely cold astral winds filled Heaven Mountain Pass all year round. Even regular spiritual detection experts would not dare to come in contact with the astral winds. The mountains on the two sides of the stronghold were abnormally smooth, as if they had been cleaved apart by a sharp axe. Coupled with the fact that the mountains were extremely majestic, even some lesser Heaven Realm experts could not directly fly over. Heaven Mountain Pass stood at the most important location of the stronghold. This was the only place within 10 kilometers of the stronghold that could be passed through. Outside of the Heaven Mountain Pass was a grassland that stretched as far as the eye could see. If one stood at a high spot in the fortress, one would be able to see any activity on this grassland. However, The grassland was currently covered by a vast black fog. Under the black fog, one could vaguely hear deafening roars. A murderous aura that soared to the sky spread, causing the expressions of everyone on the Heaven Mountain Pass to become grave. On the vast land, countless figures stood on the ground, and a strong and ferocious aura permeated the air. There were even more figures in the sky. There were winged silver dragons, green feathered condors, and some flying spiritual beasts of unknown shapes. Every single one of them was extremely powerful. As energy gathered, it was like a multicolored ocean. It was resplendent, but it also gave off a heavy, oppressive presence. A huge black city, several thousand meters tall, sat at the end of the land. It was majestic and filled with the presence of time. This was the most important line of defense between the primitive world and the 100,000 Bear Mountains, Heaven Mountain City. Densely packed figures stood on the city walls and in the sky. They gave off extremely terrifying, oppressive pulses. This place was used to defend against the invasion of the beast race, so it was obviously heavily guarded. There was a reason why Qin Feng chose to break out of the encirclement here. During this period of time, the primitive land and the beasts often fought, and this was the place where the battles were the most intense. Logically speaking, Qin Feng and the others shouldn't have chosen this place. After all, they were going to fight the beasts, and it was going to be a large-scale battle. If they weren't careful, they would die. Under normal circumstances, no one would choose this place, but Qin Feng was different. He had spiritual force, which was a natural counter to the Beast Clan, and he was also very familiar with using the Divine Dragon technique. Once the might of the Divine Dragon was released, not many spirit beasts could withstand it. He had already reached the late stage of the spirit-detecting realm and was infinitely close to the small heaven realm. Normal rank 5 spirit beasts wouldn't be able to defend against him. Furthermore, there weren't many spirit beasts at this level in the outer region of the 100,000 Bear Mountains. Whether it was in the primitive lands or the 100,000 Bear Mountains, lesser heaven realm experts and 5th grade spirit beasts were the core forces. As for Qin Feng and the others, they were all capable of killing minor heaven realm experts. Now that their strength had increased, their battle prowess had naturally increased by a notch. Minor heaven realm experts and rank 5 spirit beasts were no threat to them. As for Qin Feng, with his divine dragon technique and spiritual force, no spirit beasts other than rank 5 spirit beasts could stop him. This was one of the reasons why he dared to enter the 100,000 Bear Mountains. Of course, it didn't mean that an expert of his level could enter the 100,000 Bear Mountains, but that he was forced to. There was no way out if he continued to stay here. Moreover, the demon I had awakened, so it was much safer. The Imperial Capital's experts are all fighting the spirit beasts over there. This is a good opportunity for us, Tan Xian said. Everyone nodded and then laid down in the grass, quietly waiting for an opportunity. As they waited, the battle on the other side also entered a state of incandescence. In front of Heaven Pass City, a black storm began to sweep, quickly pushing toward the city. "Archers, get ready!" an expert on the city wall shouted. Row after row of archers held huge black crossbows and pulled their bows to a full moon. Suddenly, sharp black arrows pierced through the void like a swarm of locusts. The arrowheads of these black arrows were golden and had patterns on them. As they rotated, a powerful tearing force burst forth. Without a doubt, these arrows were enough to kill ordinary spirit-detecting experts. Poochie, Poochie, the dense black arrows shot into the spirit beast horde, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Screams and roars of beasts resounded at this moment. Spirit beasts fell from the black storm. Some of them turned into mutilated corpses. Kill! The black storm let out a deafening roar as the spirit beasts with huge bodies released terrifying energy fluctuations, forming a huge black energy ball that continued to push forward. Activate the formation. Buzz. Around the city wall, beams of light shot out. Spiritual light flickered and intertwined, like a huge energy gouge that was inverted on the huge Heaven Pass City. Boom. Boom! Boom! One attack after another landed on the energy barrier, and the huge energy barrier trembled. Densely packed ripples spread out like waves, spreading from the front of the city gate to the entire energy barrier. Attack together, attack in one direction. In the black storm, cold and blood-red eyes flashed as they waved their strongest attacks. Colorful energy gathered in one place, forming a black beam of light that was hundreds of feet long. In the next moment, as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting, a huge roar resounded through the world. Clearly, powerful spirit beasts had gained intelligence and even transformed into humans to form an army of spirit beasts to attack Heaven Pass. At this moment, the world lost its color and the sun and moon were silent. Only the collision could be heard. Spatial fragments danced in the air, and mushroom clouds bloomed one after another. Huge black holes appeared in the collision. Indescribable destructive fluctuations spread out crazily, causing the entire Heaven Pass city to tremble violently. On the energy barrier, it was like boiling water that was constantly spreading, affecting the entire barrier. Attack again. Terrifying attacks gathered in one place, bombarding the great array of Heaven Mountain City continuously. On the energy barrier, ripples spread out crazily. It was as if waves were sweeping out, each wave stronger than the last. After more than 10 consecutive bombardments, a small crack quietly appeared on the energy barrier. Poochie! In the city, the people operating the formation paled and their bodies trembled. What's going on? Have these spirit beasts gone mad? The leader operating the formation shouted. He was puzzled. Why were the spirit beasts so crazy today? In the past, it was just a small fight, but this time, they seemed to be serious. They were determined to break through. We must hold on. Our reinforcements are coming. Boom! Just as he finished speaking, his body shook violently. An arrow of blood spurted out from his mouth, and then he fell limply to the ground. Poochie, numerous figures fell to the ground one after another, wailing in agony. Chapter 340. Killing their way out of Heaven Mountain City the moment the Great City Barrier Formation was shattered. Nearly half of the people in the city vomited blood and fell to the ground, losing their ability to fight. Soldiers, follow me in a battle to stop the spirit beasts. Behind us is our home. Do you want to see your loved ones buried in the belly of the spirit beasts? Or follow me to defend our home with our lives? Defend our home with our lives. Shocking cries rang out in the city, and high fighting spirits swept through the world. Following that, terrifying figures burst out and collided heavily with the army of spirit beasts. In just one clash, countless people and spirit beasts exploded with bloody light and were crushed on the spot. Blood rained down like a rain of blood. In some areas, even more terrifying energy fluctuations erupted. Many people and spirit beasts exploded on the spot, and blood dyed the sky red. What was bloody, what was tragic, what was the road to hegemony was filled with corpses, and what was the mournful wails of war? This moment was a true portrayal of it. What was war? This was bloody, tragic, and cruel. Death was on display at this moment. Human and beast lives were as worthless as grass. So tragic? Qin Feng and the others who were watching from the rear were all shocked. The Heaven Pass city with its terrifying defense was actually broken through. Everyone's eyes were bloodshot as they desperately tried to kill the spirit beasts in front of them. No one was righteous, and no one was innocent. They were just sad chess pieces played by fate. Some people wanted to stop chaos by killing, and naturally, there were also people who wanted to start chaos by killing. Those who were killed would stop violence by killing. On the chessboard, no chess piece was innocent. There was no distinction between good and evil. They were just performing their duties in their positions. The Spirit Beast army clearly had super high-level spirit beasts overseeing it. They attacked in an orderly manner, and soon, Heaven Pass City side began to retreat. As more and more Heaven Realm experts fell, Heaven Pass City side was gradually losing. It's about time, Qin Feng said, and was about to take action. Wait, Tan Xian stopped Qin Feng and sneered, Heaven Pass is an important fortress. How can it be broken so easily? Qin Feng was startled for a moment before he nodded. The Tan family used to be a major force in the Imperial City, so they should have some understanding of the Imperial City's defenses. As expected, just as Heaven Pass City was about to fall, a dark army suddenly appeared. These people had strong combat abilities and were decisive. Every time they attacked, a spirit beast would fall. This is the Dark Army. Every important stronghold will set up such an army for emergency use. Tan Xian smiled. Qin Feng nodded. Fortunately, they hadn't moved out yet. Otherwise, they would have attracted the Dark Race Army's attack. With the deployment of the Dark Army and their participation in the war, Qin Feng and the others could not wait any longer. His mental power enveloped everyone and they disappeared into the air, quickly running towards Heaven Pass City. As long as they were out of this fortress, they would be free to do whatever they wanted. No matter how strong the imperial capital was, they would not be able to reach this side. Although the mental power enveloped the four of them, it was inevitable that some fluctuations would leak out. However, in this large-scale war, neither humans nor spirit beasts would pay attention to it. After all, no one would pay too much attention to the obscure fluctuations in the void. The few of them moved quickly at the edge of the battlefield. In addition, he faintly displayed the might of the divine dragon, causing many spirit beasts to avoid this area out of instinctive fear. They reached the front of the city without any mishaps. The gate there had already collapsed, and the space was vast. Qin Feng's group avoided some experts and quickly rushed out of the city. However, at this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. It was the attack of a powerful mental power master. He felt that something was wrong. Qin Feng withdrew his mental power and sent it back. That person staggered from a shock. Qin Feng. That person immediately revealed a shocked expression. Qin Feng's name resounded like thunder in the primitive lands. There was no one who did not know of him. The higher-ups had also ordered them to pay attention at all times because they were worried that Qin Feng would escape into the 100,000 Bear Mountains. However, the Spirit Beast Army had succeeded today, so they did not pay attention. They did not expect this monster to really want to break into the 100,000 Bear Mountains. Soldiers, Qin Feng is here. Follow me and capture them, the Mental Power Master shouted. Immediately, many people gathered with blood-stained weapons. They stared at Qin Feng's group with murderous intent. Since we've been discovered, there's no need to hide. Jing Wui held deicide in his hand with a cold gaze. Tan Xian's body also trembled slightly. The heaven-slaughtering spear appeared in his hand. With a light stroke, it caused the air to explode. Before leaving, they also wanted to have a good fight. Big flower explosions, eyes were green. She clenched her small fists, and dark green scales could be seen faintly. Boom! The battle was on the verge of breaking out. Sword Chi swept out, and the spear vibrated. More than 10 warriors were killed on the spot. The four of them each had the ability to kill a small heavenly realm elite alone, let alone these people. Qin Feng mobilized his mental power and formed a yin-yang fusion formation. He rushed toward the upper earthly rank mental power master. This was the only elite in the area who could rival a small heavenly realm elite. The mental power master shouted. His mental power swept out and formed some kind of formation. It collided with the yin-yang fusion formation. As soon as they came into contact, he was sent flying. His face was filled with shock. His mental power level was clearly higher than his opponent's. How could there be such a huge gap? Qin Feng was also shocked by his opponent's weakness. However, he quickly understood that this was a mental power master from the imperial capital. He probably did not have the spiritual outer coffin, which was known as a mental power master's death talisman. Naturally, his combat power was greatly reduced. Today, I'll take your life first. Qin Feng's eyes were sharp. He controlled the yin-yang fusion formation to attack his opponent. Boom! Another small heavenly realm elite was approaching. Big flower explosion. Qin Feng shouted. He separated a strand of mental power and carried Big Flower Explosion's body into the air. Big Flower Explosion fist. Big Flower Explosion shouted. All of a sudden, the air exploded. The small heavenly realm elite was sent flying. He looked at Big Flower Explosion in disbelief. He was actually seriously injured by such a little girl. In his depression, coupled with the fact that he was severely injured, he directly fainted. What was even more tragic was that a rank 3 spirit beast approached and swallowed him. Bang! After an intense collision, the mental power master was sent flying. His body was covered in blood. He was seriously injured. I don't want to accept this. Our elites are all held up. He roared angrily. His eyes were red. He was extremely unwilling. Heaven Mountain City's defense was very strong, and there were many elites. If Qin Feng dared to break through here, they could kill him with a flick of their fingers. But now, they were fighting with the spirit beasts. Most of the elites were held up. Even now, many people did not know that Qin Feng, the great criminal of the imperial capital, was right under their noses, and there was nothing they could do. Pucci! Qin Feng flashed and cut the mental power master's neck. Blood gushed out. Behind him, several streams of light streaked across the sky, making sharp sounds. The ground shook violently. Obviously, reinforcements from other directions had arrived. We should go. Imperial capital, primitive land. Qin Feng will be back. Looking deeply at the primitive land behind Heaven Pass City, Qin Feng did not stay any longer. He quickly let a few people out of the city. His mental power and dragon aura burst out at the same time, forcing the spirit beast to stay away. Chapter 341. Spirit in the Dark Forest. Qin Feng's group of 4 shuttled quickly. Their spiritual energy permeated their bodies, causing them to disappear into the air. They traveled unimpeded for dozens of miles before stopping. Qin Feng withdrew his spiritual energy. He could not afford to use it for such a long time. The 4 of them hid under a waterfall and used the water god technique to recover their energy. Half an hour later, everyone had recovered to their peak. Qin Feng withdrew the power of water and flew out of the pool onto the waterfall. Tan Xian looked around and said, "This should be the periphery of the 100,000 Bear Mountains. There shouldn't be any powerful spirit beasts here. However, if we continue to go deeper, I'm afraid we will encounter many spirit beasts." Qin Feng nodded slightly. The 4 of them were not familiar with the 100,000 Bear Mountains at all. They had no sense of direction and did not know where the more powerful spirit beasts were. That was where the larger spirit beasts gathered. They would need to slowly explore and move forward. It's going to be difficult to pass through here. Jing Wui was speechless. Although entering the 100,000 Barren Mountains would allow them to escape the pursuit of the imperial capital, there was still a terrifying situation waiting for them. However, compared to the imperial capital, they preferred this place. Let's slowly explore and move forward. Fortunately, they were not ordinary people. Jing Wui and Tan Xian had wilderness survival skills, concealment, ambush, and a keen sense of danger. They were far better than others. The exploding flower should be some kind of spirit beast. When she entered this place, she was like a dragon entering the sea. Her ability to sense powerful spirit beasts was extraordinary. Sometimes, Qin Feng and the rest did not notice it, but she could sense it and avoid it. With Tan Xian and Jing Wui scouting the terrain and surveying the danger, identifying the direction, and the exploding flower's special ability to sense spirit beasts. In addition, Qin Feng's dragon god's prestige and spiritual energy suppression. They walked for hundreds of miles without encountering any danger. It could be said that they were the best combination. Each of them performed their own duties and maximized their abilities. In the 100,000 Barren Mountains, where spirit beasts were everywhere, it was as if they were entering an uninhabited land. A depth of several hundred kilometers was something that even 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters wouldn't dare to enter, but they had done it. At this depth, they could be considered to have entered the middle latitude of the 100,000 Barren Mountains. Many powerful spirit beasts appeared. This kind of strength was not individual strength, but the appearance of a group. Here, they would sometimes see gigantic crocodiles in the distant valleys. There were at least several hundred of them, and there were even more in the water. In a forest, Many spirit monkeys were hanging on the treetops, swaying back and forth. Thousands of single-horned wolves could also be seen hunting large spirit beasts that were many times stronger than them. These races all had a strong sense of territory. Any intruder would be wiped out by them at the first moment. When Qin Feng and the other three entered this place, they became even more careful. These spirit beasts were very powerful, far from being comparable to those scattered spirit beasts. Nevertheless, Qin Feng's control over his mental power had reached an appalling level. In addition, his mental power could cover his body. Spirit beasts were born with a weak sense of mental power, so he did not encounter any danger. The four of them moved very slowly. Usually, after half an hour of infiltration, they would find a place to hide. When Qin Feng's mental power recovered, they would move out again. After a few exchanges, they narrowly passed through this tribe's territory. However, before they could breathe a sigh of relief, there was a sudden beast roar from behind. More than a dozen fire spiritual leopards with red fur rushed out of the dense forest, staring at Qin Feng and the others with malice and violence. Damn it, the fire spiritual leopard's hearing is extremely sharp. We were discovered by them, Jing Wui said. Let's finish the battle quickly. Qin Feng rushed out immediately, wanting to finish the battle quickly and not let the commotion spread. Tan Xian and Jing Wui quickly followed and released their spiritual power. The three of them worked together, and in less than 3 minutes, all the fire spiritual leopards were killed. However, their expressions changed because in the distance, fiery light overflowed into the sky. Baleful energy pervaded the air as a large group of fire spirit leopards charged over. Run quickly! The few of them ran quickly and maximized their speed. However, the fire spiritual leopards were natural speed-type spiritual beasts. In terms of speed and agility, there were almost no spiritual beasts that could match them, especially on the ground. Therefore, even if they were weaker than Qin Feng and the others, they caught up quickly. Qin Feng formed the yin-yang integration formation and quickly attacked the back. At the same time, he divided his mental power into various sharp weapons and swept them out. Suddenly, the beasts behind them roared and screamed. However, this angered them even more, and they desperately chased after Qin Feng and the others. In the end, Qin Feng even used the Dragon God's power, but it was not effective. After all, there were too many fire spiritual leopards. His Dragon God's power alone could not achieve much. Left with no choice, the four of them could only run for their lives. Roar! The fire spiritual leopards caught up from behind and closed the distance. Each of them opened their mouths and shot out energy beams. The four of them quickly dodged. As a result, their speed was even slower, and the fire spiritual leopards surrounded them. You guys go first. Qin Feng let out a loud shout and stopped at the end. His mental energy transformed into numerous sharp mental weapons that whistled and surged around him, causing the void to tremble unceasingly. We're just passing by. We have no intention of disturbing you. Qin Feng's eyes were cold. He used the Dragon God's power to the extreme, and the dragon's power filled the air. Roar! However, it was useless. The fire spiritual leopards quickly jumped up and swooped down on him. You're courting death. Qin Feng's eyes were cold. The sharp weapons shot out and pierced through their heads. Although Qin Feng's mental power could suppress the spiritual beasts, there were too many fire spiritual leopards, and they were too fast. He could not aim at them one by one, and could only shoot at random. Boom! Suddenly, there was a flash of fire, and a fire spiritual leopard rushed out from the bushes like a flash of red lightning. In an instant, it was close to Qin Feng. Its sharp claws shone with a cold light, and it grabbed at Qin Feng's head. Poochie! However, at this moment, its body suddenly stopped and froze in midair. A long spear had pierced through its head. Haha, we've escaped here together. How can we let you face the danger alone? Jing Wui laughed. His saber chi swept out and killed a few fire spiritual leopards that were charging at Qin Feng. Qin Feng was helpless. At this point, they could only fight and escape. We're almost out of the territory of the fire spiritual leopards. As long as we get out of here, their pursuit will not be so fierce. The four of them retreated as they fought. Suddenly, the fire spiritual leopards roared angrily behind them. At the same time, an extremely strong pressure spread out. Peak of the 5th level spiritual beast. Qin Feng and the others' faces changed. They were not afraid of such spiritual beasts, but it would take some time to deal with them. In the territory of the fire spiritual leopards, they could not afford to waste time. This was because more and more powerful fire spiritual leopards would attack them. However, at this moment, the fire spiritual leopards that surrounded them suddenly retreated. What's going on? Did the 5th level fire spiritual leopards give the order to retreat? Qin Feng was puzzled. We should be out of the territory of the fire spiritual leopards, Tan Xian said with uncertainty. The three of them looked at each other and were puzzled. Even if they had left the territory of the fire spiritual leopards, they had killed so many of them. The other party should not have retreated so easily. Just as they were puzzled, Big Explosion suddenly exclaimed, "Uncle, that sister is so beautiful." Qin Feng and the other two swiftly looked over. Immediately, their pupils violently shrunk. Chapter 342. Capturing the demon on a tree branch not far away, a figure could be seen. This was a humanoid creature, causing Qin Feng and the other two to be shocked. There were actually humans in the 100,000 Barren Mountains? How was this possible? But upon closer inspection, their pupils shrank. Although it was humanoid, there was a pair of wings on its back. These wings were not formed by spiritual power, but carried by its body. The wings were slightly transparent and emitted a milky white light. As they flapped slowly, they created spirals of air of various sizes. It was a little girl. Just by looking at her appearance, she looked very lively and cute. She looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. She had soft blue hair that extended to her arms. Her eyes were a dazzling blue, like a burning blue flame. What shocked them the most was that other than her wings, she looked like a normal human. But there was something special about her. Her ears were long and sharp. Fairy race. The three of them immediately recognized the girl. She was not a human, but in fairy. She had wings and pointed ears. These were the unique characteristics of the fairies. There were some legends about the fairies in the primitive land. The most popular one was that the fairies used to be humans, but their bloodline mutated. In the end, they broke away from the human race and became a different race. Because of this mutation, they loved forests and mountains, so they lived in seclusion in the 100,000 Bear Mountains. Because of this mutation, this race was extremely arrogant. Not only did they not call themselves humans, but they also hated humans. They thought that humans were the lowest race and they were the superior ones. Therefore, in a long time ago, a war broke out between the human race and the fairies. Because the fairies were few in number, they were defeated in the end. From then on, they lived in the 100,000 Bear Mountains and never appeared in front of the world again. This was just a popular saying. There was another saying that the fairies were a product of nature. They were born from the power of the heavens and earth and were blessed by the heavens. They loved nature and were forest fairies. They hated humans and thought that humans were the most failed products of the heavens and earth and should be destroyed. They especially hated humans who entered the forest to hunt spirit beasts. In their view, spirit beasts were also a product of nature and were part of the forest. The actions of humans were evil in their eyes. Therefore, they hated humans very much. There is also another saying that the elves were the monsters of the forest, born from the essence of the sun and the moon. They were the leader of all creatures, the highest level of creatures, and were said to be the existence closest to the gods. No matter what, elves were mysterious and the most dangerous creatures to humans because they were infinitely close to humans in every aspect. Humans and elves could not coexist. Therefore, when they recognized that this girl was an elf, they were all stunned. This was because the legends about elves were only spread by word of mouth, and they had never seen one before. There were legends of elves in the 100,000 Barren Mountains, but they never thought that they would meet them here. After being stunned for a moment, the three of them reacted at the same time and quickly rushed toward the elf, wanting to quickly suppress it. The fire spirit leopards left not because of this elf, but because this was the territory of the elves. Moreover, from the speed at which they retreated, it was obvious that they were afraid of the elves. It was evident that the elves were overlords in this area, and normal spirit beasts dared not provoke them. Even if Qin Feng and the others had to face other spirit beasts, they didn't want to face the elves. After all, the legends about the elves were not good for humans. They reacted immediately and want to catch the elf. The elf's reaction was obviously half a beat slower. When she came back to her senses, Qin Feng and the other two had already attacked from 3 directions. "Ah!" the elf shouted, and the sound waves turned into ripples that spread out from her mouth. "Buzz!" Qin Feng and the other two were shocked. Their bodies were really trembling from the strange sound waves, but they reacted immediately. Their spiritual power exploded and connected with each other, forming a huge spiritual power energy shield that sealed the area. The elf flapped her wings and kept attacking, but she was not facing ordinary people. She was facing Qin Feng and the other two who could kill a Heaven Realm warrior by themselves. The 3 of them formed a triangle and surrounded the elf in the middle. Their spiritual power kept pressing forward, trying to catch her quickly. However, they underestimated the elf's speed. She was like a gust of wind, moving so fast that it was almost impossible to see her with the naked eye. They could only roughly determine her direction based on the trajectory of her breath. "We can't drag this out for too long," Tan Xian said with a serious expression. Qin Feng and Jing Wui nodded. This was the elf's territory. If other elves appeared, it would be troublesome. They no longer held back and used all their strength to surround the elf and begin to capture her. "Ah, 2-legged monster, don't kill me." The elf was obviously frightened. Tears gathered in her deer-like eyes, and her body trembled like an injured deer. When facing this scene, Qin Feng and the other two suddenly felt a sense of reluctance in their hearts. Weren't their actions too evil? However, they soon realized that they had been tricked. After the elf begged for mercy, she immediately flapped her wings and shot out a beam of light from her mouth. It actually pierced through the 3's defense and quickly slipped away. "Damn, she tricked us." Jing Wui's eyes widened, and he gritted his teeth. He had been tricked by an elf. They quickly chased after her. When the elf broke through the encirclement, she suddenly turned her head and let out a strange sound wave from her mouth. Roar! At the critical moment, Qin Feng used the dragon's sky-shattering roar, and the dragon's roar resounded. Normal physical defense would not work on a sound wave attack. Only a sound wave attack could neutralize it. After the dragon's sky-shattering roar was used, the elf's body shook violently and her speed slowed down. Qin Feng's eyes lit up. The dragon's aura also had an effect on elves. Elves were like humans and beasts. He could not tell what race they were. However, he did not expect that the dragon's aura, which suppressed spirit beasts, would also suppress elves. This would make things easier. Qin Feng used the dragon's aura. Suddenly, the dragon's aura shone brightly and spread toward the elf. At the same time, he rushed forward and used the divine dragon technique. The dragon's roar continued. As he attacked, dragon claws and dragon tails constantly appeared with his attacks. The divine dragon technique and mental strength naturally restrained spirit beasts. Now, it also had a miraculous effect on elves that were like beasts. Under Qin Feng's fierce attacks, the elf's speed strangely slowed down. Especially when Qin Feng attacked, the dragon shape appeared. Her body trembled and she instinctively felt fear. In the end, Qin Feng's mental strength crushed her and controlled her. "Do it!" Qin Feng shouted. Tan Xian and Jing Wui rushed up at the same time and quickly condensed their spiritual power. Chapter 343. Innocent Xiaochun, the elf's eyes were filled with fear as she begged Qin Feng and the others not to kill her. Looking at the terrified look on her face, Qin Feng's heart softened. He waved at Tan Xian and Jing Wui. "Qin Feng, elves are not normal. Don't be deceived by her illusion," Jing Wui said. The power of his palm was getting more and more terrifying. We've already subdued her. There's no hurry to kill her, Qin Feng said. He then looked at the trembling elf and said in a low voice, if you're honest, we won't kill you. But if you still want to run, don't blame us. I won't run. As long as two-legged monsters don't kill me, I won't run. The elf put her hands together and promised that she would not run. Qin Feng released the suppression of his spiritual power, but he did not withdraw it completely. He sealed the elf's surroundings. Then he used the dragon god's might to warn her. The elf's delicate body trembled. She looked at Qin Feng with fear in her eyes and kept nodding. Qin Feng and the others looked at each other. Tan Xian and Jing Wui then separated and surrounded the elf. They were very close to each other. If the other party made the slightest move, they would kill her immediately. We just barged in by mistake. We don't mean any harm. Qin Feng looked at the frightened elf and tried to lower his voice. If you're willing to lead the way and let us leave this place, we promise not to hurt you. The elf's dazzling blue eyes looked at Qin Feng without blinking. After a long time, she asked, you're not two-legged monsters that the Dark Elves found to deal with us? Qin Feng and the others were speechless. They were handsome men with good manners. How could they be related to monsters? The other party kept calling them two-legged monsters as if they were very scary. In their eyes, elves are the scariest. The three of them looked at each other and nodded secretly. Obviously, they could tell that this elf was not very experienced and should be very easy to fool. That little girl, we are not two-legged monsters. We're all good people. Jing Wui smiled. His eyes were curved, and he looked like a wretched uncle. However, the sprite did not seem to be able to tell, and said in a serious tone, you have two legs, aren't you monsters? We have your statues there. The two-legged monsters look exactly like you. Jing Wui's lips twitched, and he smiled in a very friendly manner. Look at how pure my smile is, and how handsome I am. How could I possibly be a monster? The elf tilted her head and carefully sized up Jing Wui. Then, she said with a serious face, but you guys look really scary. Jing Wui stopped talking and spread out his hands, indicating that he would leave it to the two of them to deal with. He was very depressed. Why were they monsters in the eyes of the elves? They even had two legs. This was too depressing. Was it their fault that they had two legs? One leg. 3 legs are the scarier ones, okay? After talking with the elf for a while, they were sure that this elf should be in her infancy. She was very ignorant and pure like a piece of white paper. Under their careful guidance, she gradually changed her view of two-legged monsters. Xiaochun, you have a deep misunderstanding of us. There are also good things about two-legged monsters. Qin Feng said seriously, changing the elf Xiaochun's misunderstanding of two-legged monsters. My grandfather said that two-legged monsters are very scary. They will eat elves. Xiaochun opened her big watery eyes and looked curiously at Qin Feng, then at Tan Xian and Jing Wui. Finally, she walked towards Jing Wui. Only this monster doesn't look scary, Xiaochun said to Jing Wui with a lecherous smile. Qin Feng and Tan Xian's eyes twitched. What kind of gaze was that? What kind of aesthetic sense was that? Could she not see that this was not a pure smile, but a wretched one? Ha! Jing Wui laughed heartily, looking very pleased with himself as he looked at Qin Feng and Tan Xian. Xiaochun, you really are adorable. You really have a discerning eye for people. You were actually the first to notice the kindest of the three of us. He pulled Xiaochun to the side and smiled amiably. Xiaochun, I'm a good person, and they're not bad people. We were forced here by real bad people, and we don't have any hostility toward this place. Can you take us through here? Were you forced here by the Dark Elves? Xiaochun asked innocently. Dark Elves? Jing Wui was startled. He did not understand, but he smiled and said, in short, we have no hostility towards you or your tribe. If there is anything you need help with, we will be happy to help. Really? Xiaochun was delighted. Can you help us fight the Dark Elves? Jing Wui's face froze. He really wanted to slap his own mouth. What nonsense was he talking about? Haha, we're those Dark Elves. They are very bad elves. They killed many of our good elves, Xiaochun said, clenching her little fists. She was very angry. Hee hee. Jing Wui laughed awkwardly and looked at Qin Feng and Tan Xian. The two of them crossed their arms and looked like they were watching a good show. Didn't you like to trick little Lolas and beauties? Continue. Seeing this, Jing Wui's mouth twitched. Suddenly, he saw a big explosion and immediately said, Xiaochun, look, that little sister likes you a lot. I like this little sister too. Xiaochun was very naive and was immediately distracted by Jing Wui. Little sister. Xiaochun walked towards big explosion. Obviously, she liked little Lolas like big explosion. Don't touch me. Who is a little sister? Big explosion was unhappy and pushed Xiaochun away, not wanting her to come close. This little girl is very naive. Jing Wui walked over and the smile on his face disappeared. He looked at Xiaochun, who was quickly playing with big explosion, and his expression became serious. Maybe we can use her to pass through the territory of the elves. Qin Feng nodded slightly. He stopped them because of his plan. But she said that the dark elves are troublesome. It should be that the elves are also divided into factions. Tan Xian nodded and said, let's hope we can pass through here safely and not have any conflicts with them. Xiaochun was too naive, so she trusted people easily. They didn't think that other elves were so easy to get along with. As for the internal disputes of the elves, they didn't want to get involved. Soon, Xiaochun completely trusted them and treated them as good two-legged monsters. Of course, this was partly due to Jing Wui's obvious and covert tactics. They were lucky to have met an ignorant elf. They could use her to pass through the territory of the elves, as long as they didn't come into contact with any dark elves. However, sometimes things didn't go as planned. Before they left this place, there was a sharp sound of something breaking through the air. In the mountain forest, figures flashing with black light shot out from the ground. At the same time, a murderous aura spread out. Chapter 344. Light and dark. Sensing the strength of the aura, Qin Feng and the other two's complexion changed abruptly. They had encountered dark elves. 6 or 7 figures appeared, 5 men and 2 women. All of them had pointed ears and a pair of wings on their backs. Their wings were the opposite of Xiaochun's. They were transparent with a hint of dark color, giving off a baleful aura. Obviously, these were the dark elves Xiaochun had mentioned. Qin Feng and the other two sighed inwardly. They had just encountered the light elves, and before they could do anything, they had run into dark elves. Their luck was really bad. Haha, it's actually Princess Xiaochun. It seems that even the heavens want to exterminate the light elves. Haha. Seeing Xiaochun, the leader immediately laughed proudly. Qin Feng's heart sank. He could hear the strong, killing intent in the other party's laughter. I'm afraid this won't be easy to pass, Tan Xian said in a low voice. These dark elves were obviously experienced. They couldn't be persuaded with just a few words. This is a two-legged monster? Suddenly, Ming Xin saw Qin Feng and the others. He was immediately startled, and then revealed a look of disbelief. Previously, he had thought they were just ordinary elves, but after careful observation, he discovered that they were actually two-legged monsters. What two-legged monster? I'm your grandpa. Jing Wui cursed angrily. They were upright people. How could they be monsters in the eyes of the elves? If they didn't add 2 feet, then they were 2 feet. It was too coy and unpleasant to hear. Ming Xin's eyes turned cold, flickering with bewilderment. He didn't make a move for a while. Obviously, he was afraid of two-legged monsters. Su Xiaochun, you are a light elf. How could you collude with lowly two-legged monsters? You've really lost the face of our elven race. Ming's son shouted. Hiding behind Jing Wui, Su Xiaochun looked at the angry Ming's son in fear. Obviously, she was very afraid of him. Jing Wui's eyes gradually turned cold. He, Qin Feng, and Tan Xian looked at each other and nodded slowly. Leave this guy to me. The two of you take care of the others. He secretly transmitted his voice to Qin Feng and the other two. The 3 of them moved stealthily. In the next moment, they dashed towards Ming Sen's group. Qin Feng immediately used the Divine Dragon technique and used the dragon might to suppress the bloodline of Ming's senator then. His spiritual power surged out from his mind, but it was not to attack Ming's son and the others, but to block their escape route. They had seen the speed of the elves. If they wanted to run, they would never be able to catch up. Now that the dark elves knew that humans had entered this place, if they were allowed to leave this place alive, it would not take long for this matter to spread throughout the elf tribe. And from their tone, it was obvious that they were hostile to humans, so they absolutely could not let any of them leave alive. At first, Ming's son was disdainful of Qin Feng's group of 3, but soon his expression changed. The 6 people behind him began to tremble as they felt the pressure of this bloodline. "Let's go! These 2-legged monsters are not simple." Ming's son shouted and quickly retreated. However, they ran fast and retreated even faster. They didn't know when, but they were surrounded by spiritual weapons. They naturally couldn't see these spiritual weapons, but they could feel the cold energy in the air. Moreover, this energy was very harmful to them. Whoosh! At the moment when Ming's son was shocked, Jing Wui appeared in front of him with deicide and fiercely slashed it down. Ming Sen's eyes turned fierce. He pulled out his long sword and met the attack from below. With a bang, sparks flew everywhere. Ming's son was immediately sent flying and smashed into the ground. "You just entered the heaven realm. I don't know how many people like you I have killed." Jing Wui coldly snorted. Shu Xiaochun saw that Jing Wui was so powerful that he defeated the dark elf Ming's son, who was much stronger than her, in just one move. Her eyes suddenly sparkled, and she happily shouted, "Brother E, you can do it!" "Huh, Xiaochun, watch how your brother E tortures this idiot." Jing Wui looked up and laughed. When he lowered his head, his smile was immediately replaced by coldness. He swooped down and approached Ming's Senator Qin Feng's body flashed and disappeared. The other elves were shocked. How can he be so fast? Their faces were filled with horror. In the forest, they had a unique advantage, and that was absolute speed. Even a fire spirit leopard could not catch up with them. But this 2-legged monster's speed was too terrifying. They could not even see a trace of its movement. In fact, this was not speed. Qin Feng used his spiritual power to hide his body. Bang! An elf was sent flying, his chest caved in, and he died instantly. Whoosh! The spear flashed, and another elf died. Under Qin Feng and Tan Xin's quick attacks, the remaining 6 elves were not spared. They were quickly killed. Boom! There was a loud bang, and Ming Sen's body was sent flying. Blood spurted from his mouth, and his body fell quickly. But just as he was about to come into close contact with the ground, his body suddenly twisted and the black wings on his back flapped. Then he shot into the distance. Bang! However, he did not fly far before he was blasted back by a punch. Ming Sen's eyes were filled with confusion. There was no one around. So how did he suffer such a heavy blow? He did not have time to think about this because the tip of a spear pierced through his throat. What a joke! He had just entered the small heaven realm, and under the joint efforts of Qin Feng, Tan Xian, and Jing Wui, it was already good enough for him to last one round. In fact, this group of elves was not weak, and it was very difficult to kill them all. It was just that they were very unlucky. They had encountered Qin Feng, who specialized in restraining them, so they could not use their speed advantage. After dealing with this group of elves, Qin Feng burned their bodies to ashes with the fire god technique, and then quickly left this place. Just now was a lesson. In this kind of place where danger lurked everywhere, there was no time to be careless. Along the way, the little stars in Shu Xiaochun's eyes did not disappear. She looked at Qin Feng and the other 2 with admiration. In her opinion, they were definitely great masters who could deal with a group of powerful dark elves in such a short time. Even in her tribe, they were all superior elves. "Why are you so powerful?" Shu Xiaochun asked. "Hee, big brother, he still has more powerful means to use. To deal with that idiot just now, I only used less than 30% of my strength," Jing Wui said proudly. "Wow, big brother E, you are so powerful." Qin Feng and Jing Wui rolled their eyes. Even Big Explosion was speechless. Probably only the silly Shu Xiaochun could seriously cooperate with your performance. By the way, aren't the Dark Elves the same race as you? Jing Wui did not hesitate to ask the key question. Chapter 345. Ouyang Qingqing. The Dark Elves wanted to unify the Elf clan and restore the Elf clan to its former glory. Since then, the Light Elves and the Dark Elves often fought each other. During this period, the Dark Elves were very active and often invaded our territory. There were many wars, and it was said that they even found two-legged monsters to help them. That's why I thought you were the Dark Elves' helpers. Hearing this, Qin Feng and the others roughly understood the current situation of the Elf clan. This was not a bad thing for them. The Elf clan was not on good terms with each other, and when there were wars, they did not have much energy to pay attention to other things. That elf called you Princess Xiaochun just now. It seems that your position in the Light Elf clan is not low. Qin Feng asked. Hearing this, Su Xiaochun immediately puffed up her chest and said proudly, I am the direct descendant of the Mother of Elves. The reason why the Dark Elves have not succeeded is because of our bloodline. We are the Orthodox Elves. So many elves are willing to join us. Seeing her proud look, Qin Feng and the other two secretly shook their heads. This elf was really stupid. With this kind of identity, as long as an elf had a little brain, they would try their best to hide it in front of outsiders, but she wanted everyone to know. It's not easy to live until now. Jing Wui shook his head and sighed. Big Brother Yi, are you saying that I'm very powerful? Su Xiaochun widened her eyes and asked seriously. Of course my Xiaochun is the most powerful, Jing Wui said against his conscience. It seems that my decision was right. Su Xiaochun pursed her lips proudly. I said that as long as I make a move, I will definitely do great things. Those old fellows in the clan did not believe me. Fortunately, I sneaked out. When I go back, I will definitely show off to them. If it wasn't for us, would you still be alive? Jing Wui secretly shook his head. Under Su Xiaochun's lead, they continued to go deeper into the 100,000 Bear Mountains. Wait, something is wrong. There's an unfamiliar aura. Suddenly, Su Xiaochun stopped and showed a puzzled look. What's wrong? Jing Wui asked. Big Brother Yi, something's not right nearby. There's an aura that's very similar to yours. Su Xiaochun's tone was filled with confusion. As soon as these words came out, Qin Feng and the other two's eyes reflected a cold light at the same time. They had the same aura as them. Could it be that the people from the imperial capital had chased them all the way here? But that shouldn't be the case. They were already in the depths of the 100,000 Bear Mountains. How could others possibly enter this place? Xiaochun, are you sure you sensed wrong? Impossible. Shu Xiaochun shook her head and said, This aura is very similar to yours. At that time, I felt your aura and was curious, so I want to take a look. We elves, especially those with the purest bloodline, are naturally close to nature. Here, as long as it's not too far away, as long as it's an unfamiliar aura, I can sense it. Qin Feng and the other two's expressions changed. Since Shu Xiaochun was so certain, it was obvious that a stranger had also come here. Moreover, it was very likely that he was an expert from the imperial capital. I know. It must be a two-legged monster that the Dark Elves found. Shu Xiaochun suddenly shouted and revealed a look of resentment. They are too despicable. They actually joined forces with a two-legged monster. The battle between the Light and Dark Elves is an internal struggle. They actually joined forces with outsiders to suppress their own people. Can you find the source of that unfamiliar aura? Qin Feng asked coldly. Shu Xiaochun nodded and suddenly said in surprise, That aura is quickly approaching us. Hearing this, Qin Feng and the other two quickly became alert. Over there, Shu Xiaochun pointed in a direction. Whoosh! At this moment, a sharp attack shot over. Qin Feng suddenly stretched out his hand and opened his spirit power hand. He caught the attack and then slowly crushed it. He was startled. This kind of attack wasn't very strong. This shouldn't be. If the imperial capital really sent people to hunt them down, they would definitely be at the late stage of the small heaven realm, or even the ninth heaven realm. However, this aura was only at the middle stage of the spirit detecting realm. This didn't make sense. With a whoosh, Qin Feng's eyes narrowed. "It's you." A figure slowly walked out of the forest with a long sword in her hand. She stared at Qin Feng with hatred in her eyes. "You shouldn't have chased me." Qin Feng withdrew his hand and said indifferently, "Go. I don't want to kill you. But I will kill you." Ouyang Qingqing stared at Qin Feng angrily and said, "You killed the little prince and harmed my sister. I swore that if I don't kill you in this life, I, Ouyang Qingqing, will never see my sister again." Hearing this, Qin Feng sighed and asked, "How did you get here?" "It has something to do with the dark elves, right?" Ouyang Qingqing waved her long sword and rushed toward Qin Feng without saying anything. Seeing the look of resolution on Ouyang Qingqing's face, Qin Feng paused for a moment. He waved his hand and sent Ouyang Qingqing flying. He coldly said, "This is the last time. If there's a next time, you can go down and accompany the little prince." After saying this, he ignored her and left. "Go, continue to follow me. Even if Qin Feng doesn't kill you, I will." Jing Wui coldly glanced at Ouyang Qingqing. "Qin Feng, I will not let you go unless you kill me." Ouyang Qingqing bit her red lips and stared angrily at Qin Feng, who was leaving. After leaving, Qin Feng's mood was very low. However, he did not regret it. As long as he could take revenge on the prince and the imperial capital, even if it was only for a short period of time, he did not care. He was not a saint. Why would he care about harming the innocent when taking revenge? Moreover, it was related to the imperial family. In his eyes, there was no innocence. Ouyang Qingqing was not wrong, and he was not wrong to take revenge. What was wrong was that they were on opposing sides. Tan Xian patted Qin Feng's shoulder and nodded at him. Qin Feng smiled. "Don't worry, I understand." Suddenly, the sound of battle came from afar. Shu Xiaochun's delicate face changed. "Our people are fighting with the dark elves. Big brother Yi, let's go quickly." Qin Feng and the other three did not move. Shu Xiaochun looked at them and asked, "Big brother Yi, what happened?" Jing Wui smiled and said, "Xiaochun, okay, big brother Yi will help you beat them away." "Okay, thank you, big brother Yi." Shu Xiaochun nodded happily and led the way. Jing Wui, "She is very similar to my sister." Jing Wui walked in front. After a moment of silence, he said, "I wasn't there when the assassin organization was in trouble. When I went back, I only saw my sister lying in a pool of blood. She didn't even say goodbye to me. This is the biggest regret in my life. I can't forgive myself in this life." Qin Feng and Tan Xian sighed. They had experienced this kind of pain before. "Let's do it quickly, lest we attract more dark elves." Qin Feng took out the sky-splitting axe, and Tan Xian held the sky-slaughtering spear. "You." Jing Wui looked at the two of them. "There's no need to say this between us." Tan Xian shook the sky-slaughtering spear in his hand and quickly shot it out. Chapter 346. The imperial capital's envoy looking at the two departing figures. Jing Wui had a smile on his face while his eyes were slightly moist. In the forest, light and darkness erupted. In the sky and on the ground, there were flashing figures everywhere. Every time they clashed, there would be a huge burst of spirit power. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, 3 light beams rushed out and immediately killed 3 powerful dark elves. Then, the 3 light beams continued to burst out. Everywhere they passed by, there would be a mess as figures were sent flying while vomiting blood. The light elves and dark elves were startled by the sudden appearance of the 3 figures. "This is the two-legged monster." The elves on both sides exclaimed at the same time, but their expressions were completely different. The light elves were shocked, surprised, and even a little fearful. On the other hand, the dark elves were furious, doubtful, and unwilling. "What are you doing? Don't forget our agreement." A powerful dark elf roared. They had promised to help the dark elves unify the elven race. That was why they allowed the dark elves to enter and even greeted the spirit beasts in the outside world. Otherwise, how could they come here? But now, they actually made a move on their own side. Such despicable acts of going back on their words made him furious. At the same time, he was also doubtful. Since when did the Dark Elves make contact with those people and even instigate them to defect? Ignoring that Dark Elf's roar, Qin Feng and the other two killed their way. Every time they made a move, a Dark Elf would fall. In a short period of time, the Dark Elves suffered significant losses. Bastard. The powerful Dark Elf was about to dive down and get rid of the three traitors, but he was quickly stopped by a powerful Light Elf. Tuoba, you are too despicable. You actually colluded with the two-legged monster and broke the Elven race's rules. If the Mother of the Elves knew about this, she would not be at peace. The Dark Elf Xing Qi spoke furiously. Tuoba had been frowning since Qin Feng and the other two made a move. He hesitated for a long time before deciding to block Xing Qi. The other party might be a two-legged monster, but they had saved many Light Elves. Regardless of the reason, Tuoba couldn't allow the Dark Elves to kill them on the battlefield. At the very least, he had to ask the reason. The Light Elves didn't have any contact with the outside world. How could they collude with the two-legged monster? He heard that the Dark Elves colluded with outsiders. Uncle Tuoba, they're my friends. They're here to help us. Su Xiaochun ran over under the protection of the big flower explosion and shouted to Tuoba, the Dark Elves have already colluded with the two-legged monster. They're already approaching here. Princess? After seeing Su Xiaochun, Tuoba turned pale with fright. How could he still care about what Su Xiaochun said? He immediately rushed over to protect Su Xiaochun. But this time, it was Xing Qiong who stopped him. He looked down at Su Xiaochun and shouted, Dark Elf warriors, listen up. Capture Su Xiaochun at all costs. Furthermore, there was only a little girl beside her. Any Dark Elf who was not weak would be able to catch her easily. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Immediately, rays of dark light swooped down and many figures appeared on the ground. Many Dark Elves had shaken off their opponents and were rushing over. Obviously, Su Xiaochun's status was higher than what Qin Feng and the others had imagined. At least, the Dark Elves dared to capture her at all costs. After Jing Wui killed an opponent, he immediately turned around and rushed towards Su Xiaochun. However, it was too late. It wasn't difficult for them to kill Dark Elves, but in terms of speed, they were too slow. Be it Light Elves or Dark Elves, they were all very fast. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in such a sorry state when they caught Su Xiaochun. The big flower explosion stood in front of Su Xiaochun and clenched her small fists tightly. She said to Su Xiaochun, Little girl, follow behind me. Her eyes turned dark green, and scales appeared on her arms. The big flower explosion punched out with both fists, and the space in front of her distorted. The air exploded, and the few Dark Elves who were at the front immediately vomited blood and were forced to retreat. Some of them had their innards crushed by the powerful force. The other Dark Elves were shocked, but they had plenty of battle experience and knew that this little girl was very strong. Therefore, they instantly spread out and surrounded her. This was very difficult for the big flower explosion. She didn't have much battle experience, so she could only fight them face to face. If she fought them, she would only become a live target. Qin Feng also rushed back, and spiritual weapons were constantly shot towards them. However, there were many Dark Elves who were interfering with him, and some of them were at the Heaven Realm. Even if he could suppress them, it would take some time to break through. Because the Dark Elves didn't know the big flower explosion's background, they circled around and continuously shot out energy beams. Facing so many attacks, the big flower explosion panicked and kept retreating. Some Dark Elves seized the opportunity, and their eyes flashed. Then, they suddenly swooped down and grabbed at Su Xiaochun. Roar! Suddenly, there was a sharp roar, and a huge tail covered in dark green scales swung over. It immediately sent those Dark Elves flying, and their bodies exploded in the air. It was obvious how powerful the tail was. What monster? The rest of the Dark Elves exclaimed, looking at the dark green monster lying on the ground with 4 limbs. Their eyes were filled with deep fear. This was a fear that came from the depths of their hearts, and they couldn't suppress it. Everyone, follow me. As long as we catch Su Xiaochun, the light elves will be finished, and it will only be a matter of time before we, the dark elves, unify the elf clan. A dark elf with a strong cultivation shouted to the other dark elves, "Surround that monster." These dark elves were well trained. Even if they were afraid, they quickly surrounded the big flower explosion, relying on their speed to deal with it. As for the dark elf, he directly rushed towards the frightened Su Xiaochun, and a black light condensed in his palm. However, just as he was about to grab Su Xiaochun, she suddenly disappeared. The dark elf was stunned. Before he could react, he felt a sharp force coming towards him, and he quickly put his hands in front of his chest. Bang! A dull sound was heard, and the dark elf was forced back. As he retreated, he reached out with his hand, and a black light burst out. The void trembled, and Qin Feng's figure flashed out. He held Su Xiaochun and rolled out. At the critical moment, he finally arrived. He used his spiritual power to envelop Su Xiaochun. The dark elf's eyes narrowed, and then he flapped his black wings, turned into a black light, and chased after Qin Feng. "Go away!" Qin Feng roared, mixed with the sky-shattering dragon roar, which made the dark elf's body tremble. Then his spiritual power turned into a big hand and slapped towards the dark elf. The dark elf quickly dodged and felt that this power was difficult to deal with, so he didn't take it head-on. Qin Feng held Su Xiaochun and quickly retreated, but before he could breathe a sigh of relief, his pupils suddenly shrank. Almost instinctively, he twisted his body, and then a sharp pain came from his shoulder. A long sword pierced through his left shoulder, and blood immediately flowed out. He suddenly waved his hand behind him, and spiritual power burst out. At the same time, he also attacked with his spiritual power. He quickly leaned forward, turned around, and stared coldly at the person who attacked him. Chapter 347. Guardian of Light Qin Feng stared at the youth with a gloomy expression, his heart throbbing. If he hadn't instinctively dodged just now, the other party's sword would have pierced his head. Asterisk calm. Asterisk at that moment, a shocking explosion of energy came from a distance. The mutated big flower was sent flying, her body tumbling in the air as she spat out blood. Qin Feng's expression changed greatly. To be able to injure the big flower in this state, the attacker must be a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master. Sure enough, a figure slowly appeared. Then, he continued to rush towards the big flower. Qin Feng was just about to rush over when Ouyang blocked his path and asked, "Where's my sister?" "She sneak-attacked me, but I didn't kill her." Qin Feng pointed in a direction and said, "If you rush over now, you might still be able to make it." Ouyang frowned and narrowed his eyes, looking at Qin Feng, wanting to know the meaning of his words. Qin Feng stared at him indifferently, his spirit and mental force surging at the same time as he said coldly, "I have no great enmity with your family. You better not stop me." Saying so, a red light flickered between his eyebrows, and the immortal reincarnation eye slowly opened. As it opened, a violent energy spread out. Feeling the terror of Qin Feng's attack, Ouyang was also shocked. His eyes flickered for a moment, and he shot towards the direction Qin Feng pointed at. After getting rid of Ouyang, Qin Feng carried Su Xiaochun towards the direction of the big flower. Between his eyebrows, the immortal reincarnation eye gently opened, and a shocking violent energy slowly spread out. The master attacking the big flower suddenly felt a chill in his heart and turned his head, only to see a red light erupting from Qin Feng's forehead. In an instant, all the hair on his body stood on end, and he quickly dodged. The red light shot through a dark elf in the distance and shot out from behind him, directly collapsing a mountain in the distance. Qin Feng felt regret. Although the immortal light was powerful, it was still too difficult for a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master to use. Die! All of a sudden, that person closed in on Qin Feng with a whoosh and struck out with a palm. Qin Feng's pupils constricted, and a sharp pain came from all over his body. He was directly hit by a palm filled with terrifying fluctuations of spiritual power. He turned around with all his might, channeling all his mental and spiritual energy to his back. Bang! Qin Feng's spiritual power was dispersed, and his spiritual power was shattered. The palm slammed into his back, and his body shook. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body shot down like a meteor, diving toward the ground. You? Shu Xiaochun was shocked. She stared blankly at Qin Feng. She didn't understand why he would do this. Clearly, he could have just thrown her out and resolved the crisis, but in order to protect her, he chose to take the hit. Whoosh! Suddenly, an extremely terrifying palm, carrying a dense golden light, chopped down towards Qin Feng's head. Xianyuan Owl is here too. Qin Feng was shocked, but after taking the hit of the ninth heaven realm, he was severely injured. Moreover, he was in a state of emptiness, so he couldn't gather his strength to dodge. Moreover, Xianyuan Owl was aiming for this opportunity to kill him. He wouldn't give him the slightest chance of survival. How can I be willing to die here? Qin Feng murmured in his heart. He had escaped the pursuit of the imperial capital several times, broken through the Heaven Mountain Pass, and finally entered the 100,000 Bear Mountains. How would he be willing to die here? Bang! Xianyuan Owl's sharp hand chopped down, but Qin Feng didn't feel his head shattering. He couldn't help but open his eyes, only to see Shu Xiaochun spitting out blood and her face pale. Obviously, she had blocked Xianyuan Owl's fatal blow. Shu Xiaochun's blood spilled on Qin Feng's face, making him look ferocious. You're courting death, Qin Feng roared. Taking advantage of this gap, he didn't care about his injured body and desperately mobilized his spiritual energy to attack Xianyuan Owl. But at this moment, his attack obviously didn't pose any threat to Xianyuan Owl. He easily dodged it and once again shot toward Qin Feng. Boom! At the critical moment, the blade and spear swept over at the same time. Tan Xian and Jing Wui appeared in time to resolve Xianyuan Owl's second fatal blow. Even the imperial family is here. It seems that in order to hunt us down, you're really willing to do anything, Tan Xian coldly said. Obviously, Xianyuan Owl's group was able to come here because of the Dark Elves. Aren't you also on the side of the Light Elves? Xianyuan Owl's expression was indifferent. No matter where we go, it seems that we are born to be enemies. Jing Wui looked at Shu Xiaochun, who was almost unconscious. The wings on her back were broken and drooped on her body. She looked very miserable. Qin Feng, are you all right? Jing Wui asked. Qin Feng waved his hand weakly and stabilized his body. Seeing this, Jing Wui nodded slightly and turned his head. His face suddenly surged with coldness, and his eyes were filled with an extremely cold, killing intent. Attack! Tan Xian and Jing Wui attacked Xianyuan at the same time. Humph! 2 against 1. Our imperial family is not without people. Suddenly, a figure blocked Tan Xian's path. Golden light surged around his body, releasing terrifying fluctuations. Xianyuan Xiantian, Tan Xian said in a low voice with a dignified expression. Xianyuan Xiantian was the youngest son of one of the imperial capital's older brothers. He was very powerful. Before the Tan family was massacred, the imperial capital's elder brother had sparred with him before. So many years had passed. Although they had not met again, Tan Xian knew that Xianyuan Xiantian must be extremely powerful. Xianyuan Xuantian's talent was not inferior to Tan Xian's. Coupled with the imperial family's background, Xianyuan Xiantian would not be weaker than those princes. Seeing Tan Xian and Jing Wui being stopped, Qin Feng's heart sank. He didn't know how many experts had come from the imperial capital. In his current state, any minor Heaven Realm expert could easily kill him. Whoosh! Whoosh! Qin Feng was already there, but he quickly relaxed. These were all light spirits, and they had come to protect Shu Xiaochun. In the distance, a sharp voice sounded out as ripples spread out, sending many dark elves flying. Following this, a figure descended. Thank you. A handsome young man walked over in the air and nodded to Qin Feng. His attitude was rather amiable. Obviously, he saw that it was Qin Feng who had saved Shu Xiaochun at the critical moment. When his gaze fell on Shu Xiaochun, the gentleness in his eyes was replaced by jealousy and coldness. Shu Xiaochun struggled to open her eyes. When she saw the young man, her big eyes immediately became misty and tears flowed down. Elder brother. The young man walked over and took Shu Xiaochun from Qin Feng's arms. He scolded, "Now you know the danger of fooling around." Although his tone was filled with dissatisfaction and blame, the pain and nervousness in his eyes were even more intense. "Light guards!" the young man shouted. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out in the sky. Following this, a group of people suddenly appeared. There were not many of them, only 30 to 40 of them. However, each of them was very powerful, especially their overall aura. Even ninth-layer Heaven Realm experts were slightly shaken. Chapter 348. The Power of Wood. Suddenly, a group of new forces joined the fray. Although there weren't many of them, their combat power was astonishing. Without a ninth Heaven Realm expert, no amount of Dark Elves or Imperial Capital experts could stop them. Damn it! The Nightwalker looked at the Guardians of Light with a gloomy expression. After a long time, he waved his hand. Retreat. The Guardians of Light were the elf race's most powerful guards. Only the purest elves could mobilize them. It was also because of this group of guards that they had no choice but to go out to find the two-legged monster and join forces with it. Xing Qiu looked at the Guardian of the Vision, and his eyes were clouded. In the past battles, the Dark Elves had lost many powerful experts. They hated the Guardian of the Vision to the core. Fortunately, this was only a portion of the Guardians of Light. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have the chance to retreat. As the Dark Elves retreated, the area gradually quieted down. Qin Feng and the others searched for the whereabouts of Xianyuan Owl and the other Imperial Capital experts, but they had also disappeared. They should have regrouped with the Dark Elves. Qin Feng rushed to Big Popcorn's side and picked her up. His brows were filled with heartache. The latter's entire body was covered in red, and most of the exposed skin was red, as if a layer of skin had fallen off. "Uncle, it hurts." Exploding Flower lay in Qin Feng's arms and mumbled with a pained expression on her face. Qin Feng's heart trembled. He secretly contacted the demon Eye and asked him to save Exploding Flower. Exploding Flower's mutation last time was more severe, but she was quickly healed by the demon Eye. This time, Qin Feng could only ask the demon Eye for help. "I can't save her." The demon Eye replied, "How was that possible? Last time it was because my power had been freed from your body. Naturally, I had many methods, but I can't use them now." The demon Eye said, "Don't worry, this little girl won't die. She'll just be in pain for a while." Qin Feng sighed in his heart before a smile appeared on his pale face. "It won't hurt any longer. When we return, I'll roast a pheasant for you." As he spoke, he used his last bit of spiritual energy to refine some healing herbs into liquid and smeared it on Big Flower's body to relieve his pain. After doing all this, he couldn't hold on any longer. He raised his head and jumped down. After all, he had suffered a blow from a 9th-stage Heaven Realm Master and was severely injured. If not for the situation being so dangerous, he would have already fainted. Now that he was safe, the injuries in his body suddenly erupted, and he could no longer remain calm. When he woke up, he was in a room. No, to be precise, it was a wooden room. It didn't look like a room, but more like a wooden cave. There were vines hanging all around. If one were to sense it carefully, they would be able to sense an endless life force. Qin Feng was a little surprised. This seemed to be somewhat similar to the power of wood. Along with the emergence of the Water God technique, the Fire God technique, and the Gold God technique, Qin Feng also chatted a lot with Mo Yin about the 5 Elements technique. He knew about the miraculous 5 Elements technique. The power of wood contained an endless amount of vitality and was extremely beneficial for healing injuries. Qin Feng could vaguely sense a strange life force here. He even vaguely sensed that there were wisps of air gathering towards his body. As these air currents entered his body, he dared to sense that the pain in his body was slightly alleviated. Could this be the power of wood? Qin Feng's heart trembled. He didn't cultivate the fruit with divine art, but during the trial of the true blood inheritance, he had fought against the young form of an ancestor. That ancestor also possessed the power of wood. Hence, he had come into contact with it before and had some understanding of it. Although this power was very weak and couldn't be completely sensed, it was slightly similar to the power emitted by the wood god's secret art. Not bad. There should be another secret art of the 5 elements technique here, the wood god's secret art. The demon-eyes voice sounded in his mind. Qin Feng was shocked. He licked his dry tongue and a fiery light surged in his eyes. Only now did he understand why he didn't feel weak when he woke up. It was because of the power of wood. Old demon, can you sense where it is? Qin Feng asked, a little anxious. He coveted the royal family's gold god's secret art, but he couldn't obtain it because the two were at odds with each other. If he could obtain the wood god's secret art here, it would definitely increase his strength by a lot. The fairy clan doesn't seem to know about the existence of the wood god's secret art. The demon-eyes voice was a little doubtful. But there's indeed the presence of the power of wood here. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. No one has used the wood god's secret art. So how could there be such fluctuations? And this area is covered by the power of wood. Boy, you have to check this place carefully. If there isn't an extremely powerful expert using the wood god's secret art, this place isn't simple. Qin Feng nodded, paused for a moment, and asked, could it be a powerful existence of the elf clan? It shouldn't be. When I saw the light and dark elves fighting before, no one used the wood god's secret art. The demon, I slowly shook his head. And the power of wood is always there. You should know that if you don't use it, the power of the 5 elements can't be sensed by others. If there really is a powerful existence of the elf clan using the wood god's secret art, first of all, this art is extremely suitable for healing, and it's impossible that it hasn't been passed down. Second, no one can use the wood god's secret art indefinitely, so this possibility can be ruled out. After listening to the demon-eyes words, Qin Feng nodded secretly. Indeed, if he didn't use the power of water and fire, no one could sense it. In this way, it was impossible for the elf clan to have the wood god's secret art. That's why I said that this place isn't simple. The power of wood is endless and seems to have merged with this place. Qin Feng was about to continue asking when someone suddenly came in. He quickly pretended to be asleep. Vaguely, he sensed that someone had come in. There were about 3 or 4 of them, and their auras weren't weak. They faintly locked onto him with hostility. He hasn't woken up yet? Someone asked, puzzled. With his strength, he was injured by a 9th-level Heaven Realm expert. Even if this tree hole has healing properties, he shouldn't wake up so quickly, another person said. The dark elves colluded with the 2-legged monsters. We have to be careful. I think we could try to do the same. How can you be so muddle-headed? Have you forgotten the teachings of our ancestors? The 2-legged monsters are extremely vicious and should never come into contact with them. But they saved Princess Xiaochun. This is also a fact. Moreover, the dark elves colluded with the 2-legged monsters. Their strength must have increased greatly. Let's talk about this later. The Light Spirit Lord will think about it. The Light Spirit Lord has already locked up the 2-legged monsters. I'm afraid the Light Spirit Lord has his own thoughts. It's not something you or I can guess. Moreover, they did save Princess Xiaochun. The Light Spirit Lord probably won't kill them, but he will definitely investigate this matter thoroughly. After that, the 2 of them chatted for a while before leaving. Chapter 349. Night exploration of the elf territory. Qin Feng did not expect that the elves, who were terrifying, mysterious, and untouchable existences in the eyes of humans, were also the same in the eyes of the elves. He also did not expect that after risking their lives to save Shu Xiaochun, the elves would still treat them like this. He narrowed his eyes as he lay on the wooden bed. His eyes flickered as he thought about something. From their conversation, Qin Feng learned that Tan Xian and the others had been locked up. If he had not been seriously injured and unconscious, he would have suffered the same fate. His previous thoughts of contacting the elves had changed. If he was also locked up, it would be troublesome. If the elves wanted to kill them, there would be no one left to save them. But at this moment, he was seriously injured. If he wanted to fully recover, it would be impossible for him to leave without at least 3 to 5 days. And during this time, he could not just pretend to be unconscious. Qin Feng was anxious. He had encountered a big problem. He could neither leave nor stay. Old Mo, what should we do now? Qin Feng asked in his mind. He did not know the elves' attitude towards them, nor did he dare to gamble. Leaving was the best option, but with his injuries, it was inconvenient for him to move. Perhaps we can use the endless life force of the wood energy here to heal. The demon eye paused for a moment before continuing. You cultivate the 5 elements arts, so you have the power of fire and water, especially the power of water. Water is wood, so perhaps you can use more of the wood energy here. Hearing this, Qin Feng was surprised. Is that possible? In theory, it is possible. Qin Feng nodded. Without hesitation, he used the water god technique. Streams of water energy seeped out from the air as he carefully sensed it. The power of wood was also a type of the 5 elements arts. They belonged to the same branch, so he should be able to sense that power. Qin Feng lay on the wooden bed with his eyes closed. The power of water around him surged, constantly expanding and contracting in the room. It approached the endless life force and then merged with it. He also opened his senses to the maximum. He opened up his body and mind, allowing his senses, body, and mind to merge into the environment, trying to comprehend the mysterious power of wood. He had never cultivated the divine wood formula before, so this would be very difficult. Time ticked by. Qin Feng's face was covered with sweat, and the veins on his head were squirming. Obviously, his progress was not good. It is indeed somewhat difficult, but this method is feasible. It only requires you to have absolute comprehension and understanding of the power of the 5 elements. The demonic I said in a timely manner, don't force it too much. The power of the 5 elements is the power of nature. If you force it too much, it will often backfire. When the conditions are right, success will follow naturally. Hearing this, Qin Feng calmed down and stopped trying to capture that qi. Half an hour passed, but Qin Feng didn't gain anything. However, his heart was as still as water, and there wasn't the slightest fluctuation in his state of mind. Time flowed through his fingers like sand. When it was late at night, Qin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. There was some relief in his eyes. I finally found it. He lightly smiled and formed the seal of the 5 elements art. The power of water and the power of fire appeared at the same time. Immediately after, a cool breeze suddenly blew in the room. After that, strands of cyan-colored air current that could be seen with the naked eye suddenly appeared and gathered towards Qin Feng's body. As the green qi entered his body, Qin Feng could clearly feel that his injuries were recovering at a very impressive speed. In less than 2 hours, his injuries were completely healed, and he had reached his peak. Not only that, but there was also a green qi flowing around his body, and a vigorous vitality spread out. Draw the power of wood into the jade pendant, the demonic I said. The power of wood can save my sister and Gong Xiaoxi. Qin Feng was stunned, and then his heart burned. It's hard to say. The demonic I paused for a moment, then said, but the power of wood has a vigorous and endless vitality. It will definitely be of great benefit to the two of them. Hearing this, Qin Feng hurriedly poured the green qi into the jade pendant. At first, there was no reaction, but gradually, he sensed a weak fluctuation of life coming from the jade pendant. Qin Feng was delighted. This was Gong Xiaoxi's fluctuation of life, and as more and more green qi entered the jade pendant, Gong Xiaoxi's fluctuation of life gradually became stronger. However, his joy did not last long. When Gong Xiaoxi's fluctuation of life reached a certain level, the green qi would no longer have any effect. What's going on? Qin Feng frowned and asked. Right now, you can only use the 5 elements to draw the power of wood. You don't know the real wood god spell, so naturally, you can't draw the real power of wood. The demonic I said, this is not the real power of wood. Its effect is naturally effective. Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded. He calmed his heart and sensed the fluctuation in the jade pendant. Gong Xiaoxi's had stabilized, and the wisp of life had strengthened a lot. However, Qin Yao's didn't improve much. Your sister was killed by a 9th-level Heaven Realm expert. Her situation is different from Gong Xiaoxi's. This thin power of wood won't have much effect on her. The demonic, I seem to know what Qin Feng was thinking and said so. Qin Feng was silent for a while before suddenly asking, "If I master the wood god spell, can I save them?" "No." "Why?" Qin Feng asked. "The power of wood has rich vitality, but it doesn't mean that it can bring back the dead." Your sister and Gong Xiaoxi only left behind a part of their life, aura, and a little true knowledge. I used my great magic to not completely kill them. But no matter what, in a sense, they are considered dead. If you want to truly bring them back to life, you will need a heaven-defying treasure. After pausing for a while, the demonic eye continued. However, although the power of wood can't bring them back to life, if you nourish them with the power of wood for a long time, when their life aura reaches a critical value, you might be able to awaken their mental strength. At that time, you can communicate with them mentally. This can also be considered a kind of resurrection. Qin Feng's heart moved slightly. He was even more determined to obtain the wood god spell. Now that he had recovered to his peak state, he could move freely. He used his mental strength to hide himself and sneaked out. This was a vast forest. Every tree was unimaginably thick. The smallest one was the size of an ordinary house. Some were even more than 100 meters in diameter, standing here like a small mountain. Every giant tree had a wooden hole in its trunk. It was similar to the one he lived in before. He guessed that this should be the house where the elf clan lived. The elves liked the dark, so there was no light at night. However, their hearing was extremely sensitive. They could detect even the slightest movement. Therefore, Qin Feng couldn't make any noise. Chapter 350. Ninth layer Heaven Realm Puppet. The elf tribe's terrain was quite large. Qin Feng searched for more than an hour and still couldn't find where Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the big flower explosion were. He carefully walked through the forest without making a sound. Gradually, he felt that he had entered an important place of the elf race, because he found that there were more and more hidden sentries nearby. There were even places where there was a light elf hiding in a tree a dozen meters away. It was enough to see that this was definitely not an ordinary place. Fortunately, spiritual force naturally restrained spirit beasts. The elf race was like a human, but not a human, and also like a beast, so they were also suppressed. He wrapped his spiritual force around himself, which was the best way to hide. Generally, he wouldn't be discovered, even if he was face to face with them. As long as he didn't make a sound, the other party might not be able to discover him. Of course, the premise was that he couldn't be too powerful. Qin Feng walked all the way through here. In the end, even a 9th layer Heaven Realm super powerhouse appeared. Of course, he wasn't standing guard but lived here. Qin Feng carefully passed through this super powerhouse's residence and entered the depths of the forest. He was slightly puzzled. Was this an important place of the elf race? Why was it that the more he looked at the desolate moon, the more he saw that there were no more hidden sentries here? The ground was barren, not even a blade of grass grew. Some places were dry and cracked. However, not far away, there were jagged rocks of grotesque shapes. There were many grotesquely shaped rocks standing there. Some were ordinary rocks, some were spirit beasts, some were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, and some were human-shaped rocks. There were mountains on both sides, and many of them were bare. The more he walked, the more Qin Feng felt that something was wrong. There wasn't even the slightest bit of life here. In such a large forest, let alone elves, there wasn't even a single spirit beast. Damn, what is this place? Qin Feng felt his hair stand on end. There was definitely a problem. But just as he was about to leave, the demon eye's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Boy, this place isn't simple. It should be the core of the elf race. It should be related to the release of wood energy in the elf race's territory. Qin Feng was startled. He had randomly searched around and actually barged into the core of the elf race. He quickly asked, "Old devil, can you sense the divine wood spell? There should be a divine wood art here. However, the terrain here is very special. Look at the stone forest in front of you. That's a formation that causes you to get lost. Even if ordinary people were to barge in, they would get lost within it." The demonic eye spoke with a hint of pride in his voice. "But it's lucky for you, Brad." Qin Feng was overjoyed. It was clear that the elves valued this place very much. Although they didn't know about the divine wood spell, they definitely had other treasures. Originally, Qin Feng felt that he had let them down by obtaining the divine wood art from them. But now that they had treated them like this, Qin Feng didn't feel any guilt. He took everything he could and took it all away. "Old devil, let's go." Under the guidance of the demonic eye, Qin Feng quickly passed through the stone forest formation and entered the land behind it. On this piece of land, there was nothing but a stone statue in the middle. Qin Feng approached the stone statue. This stone statue was very tall, at least 100 meters tall. The carvings were vivid and lifelike, giving off an indescribable pressure. "Danger!" The demonic eye's voice suddenly rang out. Even without its warning, Qin Feng had already sensed it. The heavenly water field suddenly opened, and then a black shadow smashed into the water like a meteor. However, with the resistance of the water, the shadow was much slower. During this time, Qin Feng retreated rapidly. Whoosh! Another strong wind blew, and the black shadow rushed over. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. The power of fire exploded, turning into a ring of flames that enveloped the black shadow. Boom! The third black shadow appeared. Qin Feng only felt his body tremble, and waves of piercing pain came from his skin. His mental power quickly circled around the spiritual coffin, and then rushed toward the black shadow. Bang! 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 The heavenly water field, the ring of flames, and the mental power's 3 defenses were all broken in an instant. The 3 black shadows quickly attacked at extreme speed. This was the pure power of the physical body. 3 consecutive sonic booms could be heard. They were too fast and too powerful. Although there was no spiritual power circulating, just the physical strength alone was comparable to a 9th stage Heaven Realm powerhouse. Chi. At the critical moment, the demonic eye made its move. A large amount of black mist rose, blocking the 3 black shadows' attacks. Qin Feng quickly retreated. After being attacked by the demon eye, the speed of the 3 black figures slowed down. Finally, they uniformly stopped in the distance. Qin Feng was shocked. Although he couldn't see their faces, his mental power could sense that these 3 people, no, to be precise, were not people, but 3 dried corpses. Their bodies were shriveled, as if they were just skin and bones. Their eye sockets were sunken, and their cheekbones were protruding. Obviously, they were not living people, but dried corpses that had suddenly come back to life. There's no vitality. They should be puppets. No wonder, the demonic eye said. Qin Feng nodded deeply. The strength of these 3 puppets had reached the 9th stage Heaven Realm. Because they had no consciousness, he could only dodge their old-fashioned attacks. Otherwise, if a real 9th stage Heaven Realm powerhouse suddenly attacked him, no matter how strong he was or how fast he reacted, he would be killed. There was no way he could dodge. "Leave it to me," the demonic eye said, about to make its move. Puppets of this level were too far away for Qin Feng. There was no way he could resist. Under the night sky, the darkness surged, turning into a large black hand that reached for the 3 puppets. Qin Feng retreated far away. This was the first time he saw Mo Yin fight without his body. He was very curious about how strong the demonic eye was now. But soon he was shocked. Under the attack of the black mist, the 3 puppets had no power to resist. This old guy is so strong. Qin Feng was happy about the demonic eye's strength, but he was also deeply worried. After all, he and the demonic eye were enemies. The demonic eye was helping him in order to occupy his body in the future. The demonic eye was very strong. This was very helpful to him, but it would also bring him great difficulties. In the future, There would be a great battle between them for the sake of their bodies. Qin Feng shook his head and threw away this worry. Now is not the time to think about this. Soon, the demonic eye dealt with the 3 puppets. What surprised Qin Feng was that one of the puppets was not dealt with and still had power. While Qin Feng was puzzled, the demon eye slipped into his palm like a wisp of smoke. Old demon, you dealt with this one? Qin Feng had a strange look. Why did he feel that the puppet still had a lot of power? My strength has reached the limit. I'll leave the rest to you. The demonic eye said, then said, don't worry. I've weakened more than half of this puppet's power. At most, it's a little stronger than the late stage of the heaven realm. Well, it's barely half a step into the 9th stage. Moreover, you don't have any opponents in the heaven realm. You can use this puppet to measure the limits of your strength. Chapter 351. Monopolizing the puppet. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth twitched. What kind of test is this? Tempering? If you don't have any strength, who would believe you? Coincidentally, after weakening it to the half-step 9th stage, heavenly stage, your strength will reach its limit. However, despite his anger, Yang Kai accepted it calmly. Just as the demon eye had said, an ordinary small heaven stage late stage master was no longer a threat to him. Moreover, he wanted to see how big the gap was between him and a 9th stage heavenly stage master. Taking a step forward, Yang Kai's fighting spirit surged. In front of him, the puppet stood upright. It wore an old-looking black armor. The armor was covered with black patterns, giving off a strange and cold feeling. Qin Feng stared at the lifeless puppet, a strong sense of danger surging in his heart. Immediately, the spirit energy in his body and the mental force in his mind quietly circulated. Kacha! While Qin Feng was carefully examining the puppet, a kacha sound suddenly rang out from under the puppet's black armor. It was as if something had been activated. Then, Qin Feng saw a pair of scarlet light shoot out from the pair of sunken eyes, causing his skin to turn cold. The puppet condensed the scarlet radiance on Qin Feng's body, after which black runes slowly rippled out from the armor as a frightening spiritual energy pressure was emitted out. Damn, how can there be spirit energy? Old demon, are you playing with me? Qin Feng yelled angrily. Aha, I accidentally injected a little. The demon eye chuckled. Qin Feng was so depressed that he wanted to die. Isn't this playing with me? Old demon, I won't let you do this. Since you already know, I won't hide it from you. It was indeed my doing, because I felt that the puppet's combat strength would be greatly reduced if it didn't have any skills or thoughts. If a half-step 9th stage, heavenly stage puppet really fought, a small heaven stage late stage master should be able to face it, but 9th stage heavenly stage puppet is too weak. I can't make it too low, but I can't make it too high either. I might as well add some spiritual energy in between. The demon eye smiled treacherously. Kid, I haven't seen you fight anyone since I woke up. I want to know where your limits are and how much you've grown over the years. Qin Feng's eyelids twitched as he said, even if I'm lucky enough to agree, I'm afraid I'll still suffer heavy injuries. At that time, when the time comes, you can use the divine wood formula to heal yourself. The demonic eye continued. I can sense the pure power of wood here. The divine wood art must be nearby. This is a great opportunity. Don't you think it's too cheap for you to get it without paying anything? Firstly, I want to test you. Secondly, I want to tell you that any kind of power comes with hard work. Of course, luck is also involved, but I hope that you will never rely on luck, because you will never know when luck will not take care of you. Once, just once, you may even have to pay with your life. Qin Feng was silent for a while. It did not take him much effort to come to the elf clan's important place. The 3 puppets were sold by Mo Yin, and he seemed to be very relaxed without paying anything. Although the demonic I did this to torture him, what it said was not wrong. People can have luck, but they can't rely on it. Qin Feng calmed his mind and looked at the puppet clad in old armor, feeling that it was quite troublesome. Although he wanted to test his own combat strength, when facing a master who had 1 foot in the 9th stage heaven realm, the pressure he felt was great. After all, the other party had 1 foot in the realm. While Qin Feng's heart was surging, A black light had already started to surge out from the puppet's black armor. A frightening spiritual energy fluctuation was swiftly condensing. Clang! That puppet did not stop at all. Its large feet suddenly stomped, and its body transformed into a black ray of light that appeared in front of Qin Feng in a ghost-like manner. After which, it threw a punch straight towards Qin Feng. Boom! As he punched out, the berserk black spiritual energy gushed out like an enraged python. Even the air was forcefully blown apart by the gale created by the punch. Qin Feng's face slightly changed. He did not expect that the puppet's speed would not be any weaker than before after it gained spiritual energy. At this moment, it was too late to retreat, so he could only use offense as a defense. He also punched out with his spiritual energy and spiritual energy. Boom! However, it was directly scattered the moment it came into contact with the strong and ferocious fist wind. After which, the remaining fist wind swept across Qin Feng's crossed arms in front of him. Qin Feng's body was instantly sent flying, and the blood in his body violently surged. His arms were stinging with pain, and he only stopped after flying dozens of meters. Qin Feng stabilized his body, but his heart was trembling. Damn it, this puppet is too powerful. In the past, when he was at the middle stage of the spirit-detecting realm, he dared to fight against someone at the late stage of the small heaven realm. Now that he had reached the late stage, he was no longer afraid of experts at this stage. However, after exchanging blows with this puppet, he knew that there was a big gap between the late stage of the small heaven realm and the half-step ninth heaven realm. Boom! Not far away, the puppet did not give Qin Feng any chance to catch his breath. It took a step that caused the earth to tremble and rushed over again, its attack sweeping out like a gust of wind. Seeing this, Qin Feng's expression turned bitter. He could only grit his teeth and continue to retreat. Bang! Qin Feng's retreating figure was once again swept by the puppet's violent fist wind. The air exploded, and his feet slid across the ground, leaving a long trail. A trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Qin Feng's heart trembled. All of his attacks were as weak as paper in front of this puppet. The gap was too big. The puppet attacked again, and Qin Feng could only choose to retreat. He used the body-changing steps to skillfully avoid its attack, then used his mental force to turn it into a sharp weapon and swept out. The puppet turned around and punched out. Along with the fierce spirit energy gushing out, all of the mental force weapons were shattered, and the aftermath attacked Qin Feng. Hand of Yang, Hand of Yin. Qin Feng used his yin-yang technique to dissolve the puppet's attack. Then, with the divine dragon body, he leaped high and turned half a circle. Borrowing the force of the rotation, he viciously swung his leg at the puppet's head. Pung! Facing Qin Feng's attack, the puppet still used a fist. In the collision, spirit energy shot out and raged, and Qin Feng was suddenly sent flying. Roar! Qin Feng roared and used the divine dragon sky collapsing roar, but the effect was even worse. The opponent was not alive, and the sound wave attack had no effect at all. A black shadow flashed, and a fist mixed with terrifying spirit energy fluctuations blasted over. Qin Feng could not avoid it, and could only meet it head-on. He used the Tyrant Dragon Claw and punched out, accompanied by Dragon Claw. Boom! Chapter 352. Obliterate. Qin Feng's expression became more and more dignified. This puppet was too powerful. Even if he used all of his methods, the difference in strength was too great. Old devil, your test is too difficult. I'm not even on the same level as it. Qin Feng quickly retreated to avoid the puppet's attack. He called out to the demon eye in his mind, hurry up and remove its spirit energy. This guy has spirit energy and can already display part of the power of a ninth-stage Heaven Realm Master. Although the old devil had suppressed the puppet's power to the half-step ninth-stage Heaven Realm, it was still a master in this realm, and its body had already adapted to this power. Now, with the addition of spirit energy, it could already display part of the ninth-stage Heaven Realm's power. Although the difference between the ninth stage heaven realm and the half-step ninth stage heaven realm was only half a step, the gap between them was like a heavenly chasm that was difficult to cross. This kind of power had already surpassed his current limit. You still have the strength to speak, which means you haven't been forced into a desperate situation, the demon I said indifferently. Qin Feng's face twitched. He really wanted to pull it out and give it a good beating. What exactly is its weakness? Qin Feng frowned. He definitely shouldn't face the enemy head-on. Just as he was thinking, the puppet attacked again. It didn't give him any time to think at all. Strong spiritual energy swept over like a black storm. Qin Feng's expression suddenly changed. The power of fire and water surged out at the same time. Walala! Walala! Water and fire burst out, one from the left and one from the right, fiercely slamming towards the puppet. Rumble! Suddenly, a dull sound rang out, and a large amount of white fog appeared, drowning the area. Using the fog to blur the other party's vision, Qin Feng quickly retreated a distance and stared into the distance. Using the Water God's secret art and Fire God's secret art at the same time was not weak. After all, with his current strength, he had already displayed these two powers to the extreme. Even a minor Heaven Realm Master would have to temporarily avoid them. Qin Feng nervously watched the white smoke rising. At a certain moment, his pupils shrank, and he instinctively moved half a meter. Whoosh! At the place where he was standing before, a withered claw that seemed to be flickering with a cold light grabbed towards him. The claw's 5 fingers suddenly clenched, and, at the center of the claw's palm, the air was violently distorted and then exploded. The sound of a sonic boom resounded. Qin Feng's expression changed. His powers of water and fire had almost no effect on it. It's just a walking corpse without any thoughts or feelings of pain. Your attacks are effective against normal living beings, but they don't have much effect on this kind of puppet. If you want to defeat him, you have to use the most violent power, said the demon eye. Can we only face it head-on? Qin Feng whispered, his eyes flickering with hesitation. Don't think too highly of it. The reason you think it's very powerful and you can't deal with it is because in your subconscious, you already think it's a powerhouse in the 9th stage heaven realm and you're not its opponent. You've given yourself a very good reason for your failure. You think it's nothing to lose to this kind of puppet because the gap between you and it is too big. Once you have a reason for your failure and find a way out for yourself, you won't be able to fight with your back against the wall and use all your strength. Kid, don't think it's that strong. In fact, it's only slightly stronger than a minor heaven realm expert. If you can't see through this, then don't even think about the divine wood art, let alone saving Gong Xiaoxi and your sister. The demon eye's tone was somewhat stern. At the end, he slowly said, in fact, the current you is not weak. Hearing this, Qin Feng fell silent. He didn't know whether the demon eye was right or not, but he did feel that this puppet was not something he could deal with. Therefore, during the battle, he focused on dodging and didn't really use all his strength. Damn, I'll believe you this time. Qin Feng no longer dodged. The spiritual energy around his body surged, setting off a gust of wind. His spiritual energy also spread out from his mind, condensing into a yin-yang fusion array. As it stretched and contracted, space quietly distorted. Let's fight. Qin Feng roared and attacked the puppet for the first time. When he rushed towards the puppet, the Sky Devourer fingers shot out, turning into a sharp beam of light. Bang! The only response the puppet received was a fist filled with ferocious spiritual energy, which shattered the finger light. Whoosh! Qin Feng appeared in front of the puppet like a ghost and threw out a punch. Black and white spiritual energy vibrated out, entangling with each other and rushing forward. Boom! After a fierce collision, Qin Feng's body trembled and then flew back. The soles of his feet scraped the ground for more than 10 meters before he stopped. He looked at the puppet with joy in his heart. The corrosive power of the yin-yang technique had an effect on it. Waves of sizzling sounds came from the fist, and the sandbag-sized fist shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. When it shrank to half its original size, the corrosive power was also consumed. Boom! Just as the puppet was about to move, suddenly, a gust of wind blew. The yin-yang fusion array fell from the sky, and spiritual energy surged like a vast ocean, smashing over. Terrifying spiritual attacks struck the puppet's body, causing it to tremble and stumble backward. It's not over yet. A cold smile appeared on Qin Feng's face. In the center of his brows, a vertical eye that glowed with a scarlet light slowly opened. In an instant, a violent aura gushed forth. Qi! A red light shot out from his eye. In front of the red light, the space was constantly distorted. The air frantically escaped, leaving a shallow red mark in the air. An extremely violent force spread out in this area. Roar! That puppet actually let out a low roar, as if it sensed danger from Qin Feng's attack. It roared in anger as black spirit energy surged out from its body. It was like a vast ocean as it furiously slammed over. The red light shot into the sea of spiritual energy with a whoosh, immediately rolling up monstrous waves, accompanied by the scarlet light. Pung! The red light directly penetrated the sea of spiritual energy and pierced through the puppet's arm. In an instant, the arm exploded. There's more! Qin Feng shouted, and the immortal reincarnation eye blinked violently. Light gathered, and another immortal light shot out. The puppet quickly dodged, and its figure rose from the ground, but it was still a step too late. The immortal light pierced through its right leg, and immediately after, the right leg exploded. Qin Feng looked at this scene with great regret. Once the immortal light was released, it was almost invincible. Even masters who had just entered the 9th stage heaven realm had to be careful when dealing with it. The attack power of this move was terrifying, but it was also because of this that it was difficult to accurately lock onto the opponent when using this move. This also led to the fact that when facing half-step 9th stage heaven realm masters, or even stronger masters, it would be difficult to effectively deal with them. This puppet had been distracted by Yang Kai's several feints, and after using the immortal light twice in a row, it still hadn't been killed and had only lost one of its legs and one of its arms. If it had been an ordinary minor heaven realm master, under such a crazy series of attacks, they would have already died, but this puppet had only lost one of its arms. Moreover, this was in a situation where the other party didn't have any consciousness. It was obvious how strong a half-step 9th stage heaven realm master was. It definitely wouldn't be easy for Yang Kai to deal with it. However, the battle had almost ended at this point. Losing a leg and an arm greatly reduced its attack power and speed. It no longer posed any threat to Yang Kai. Chapter 353. Mother of the Fairies, after successfully killing this puppet, Qin Feng's heart was filled with gratification and gratitude. If it wasn't for the demon waking him up, he might still be in a sorry state under the attack of this puppet. Remember, never fear the strong, and never underestimate yourself. The demon eye said. Qin Feng nodded solemnly. The demon eye was right. He couldn't be timid just because the opponent was strong. Right? You just said that you felt the rich power of wood here. Do you know where the divine wood art is? Qin Feng quickly asked. It should be related to this statue. The demon eye was silent for a while, then said, This statue is a bit unusual. The weak power of Wood of the Fairies is emitted from this stone statue. Hearing this, Qin Feng was shocked. A stone statue could actually emit the pure power of wood. This meant that the divine wood art was on this stone statue. He looked at the stone statue. It was very old, and the color of the stone was very dark. He didn't know if it was because of the erosion of time, or if it was originally like this, but it gave a very heavy feeling. This was a female statue. Even if the edges were worn and the traces of time were very heavy, he could still vaguely tell that this was a very beautiful woman, and she was very young. So young. Qin Feng was puzzled. To carve such a stone statue in the fairy race's important place, the owner of the stone statue must be an extremely important fairy, or a fairy who had made great contributions. But she looked very young. Qin Feng felt that it was a bit strange. This should be the mother of the fairies that the little fairy spoke of. The demon I said, then sighed. It seems that this mother of the fairies was also an extraordinary person when she was alive. The power of wood can endlessly spread out from here, enveloping the entire fairy race. This method is somewhat extraordinary. Chinfeng nodded. To be able to make the demon eye admit that this person was extraordinary, she must have been a peerless figure in the past. But now wasn't the time to sigh. He quickly asked, "Where's the divine wood art?" The demon I was silent for a while, then suddenly said, "Boy, this time you might be drawing water with a sieve." Hearing this, Chinfeng was shocked. "Old devil, what do you mean?" Earlier, I was guessing that it was most likely due to the special terrain of this place that caused the power of wood to spread. Now, it seems that it was done by someone. It should be this mother of elves doing. The demonic eye sighed and said, "If it were other strong cultivators, it would be easy. However, with my current strength, I am unable to obtain the divine wood art." Chinfeng's face darkened. "I've risked my life to do so much, and you're telling me it's all for naught? That can't be helped. You don't know how powerful the mother of fairies is." "The means of such a character can only be undone when she is at her peak," the demon I said. Chinfeng's expression was gloomy. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. The divine wood art was right in front of him, but he couldn't obtain it. How could he accept this? However, since demonic I had already said so, what else could he do? He could only admit that he was unlucky. But it's not like there's no chance at all. Suddenly, demonic I spoke again. "If it's someone else, there should be no way at all. However, if it's you, there may be a glimmer of hope." Chinfeng's eyes lit up when he heard this. He quickly asked, "What do you need me to do?" This time, demonic I fell silent and didn't respond. Chinfeng was anxious. "Old demon, say something. Even if the hope is small, I'm willing to try." This was his only chance to help Gong Xiaoxi and Qin Yao. Chinfeng really didn't want to give up. Once he left the 100,000 barren mountains and entered the outside world, he was afraid that he would have to say goodbye to the divine wood art. At that time, he didn't know when he would be able to revive Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi. Therefore, even if it was dangerous this time, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he had to give it a try. Demonic I was silent for a long time before he said in a low voice, "Boy, do you know the origin of the primitive land?" Chinfeng was startled. Immediately, his face darkened and he nodded. "You know," Demonic Eye's voice was a little surprised. "A very long time ago, a tribe was slaughtered by the experts of this world. Only a few old, weak, sick, and disabled people were left behind. They kept these people in captivity and diluted their pure blood. In the end, they released them to this continent." Chinfeng said softly, "You know everything?" Demonic Eye's voice was hesitant and trembling. "While you were asleep, I received some inheritance from my ancestors. Then, Chinfeng told Demonic Eye about his experience in the Dark Tower. Of course, he kept a lot of things to himself. He only mentioned some of the things that had been passed down for a long time." After a long silence, Demonic Eye sighed. "I didn't expect you to have awakened the pure blood in your body and become a true pure blood. This way, you may have a better chance of obtaining the divine wood art. In that era, the elven race was a subsidiary race of your bloodline. In the end, a great war broke out. Although the elven race wanted to save you, they were powerless. In the end, the mother of the elves led her race away from the land of calamity and lived in seclusion. From then on, the elven race disappeared from the world. These elves should be the descendants of that race. The mother of the elves is very likely to be that supreme existence. She was indebted to one of your ancestors. She did not pass down the divine wood art. Instead, she used a special method to seal it here. Most likely, she wanted to return it to its rightful owner, Demonic, I said. Chinfeng was startled. Return it to its rightful owner? That's right. Demonic, I nodded. The five elements art was originally invented by your ancestor. Because the divine wood art is more suitable for the elves who are close to nature, it was passed down to them. The five elements art was invented by my ancestor. Chinfeng's eyes widened. He suddenly said, "Then why didn't you tell me when you obtained the water god art? What's the point of telling you?" You haven't even opened your pure blood. What's the point of knowing? Demonic, I said. There are some things that are not good for you if you know too much in advance. But since you know part of the truth, there's no need to hide this from you. This mother of the elves is also a person of character. Although your tribe has declined, she didn't take the divine wood art for herself. Instead, she left it for the descendants of that tribe to come and receive the inheritance of the divine wood art. Kid, although this is returning it to its rightful owner, you must remember the kindness of the other party. You will have to repay it in the future, Demonic, I said. Qin Feng pondered for a moment. Then he nodded. Based on the mother of the elves' great act of guarding the divine wood art for so many years and not taking it for herself, he didn't have much dislike for the elves. After all, they were once close to his ancestor. Old demon, are you sure you're telling the truth? What I mean is this divine wood art was left to us by the mother of the elves. Qin Feng asked. She didn't pass it down to the descendants of the elves. There should be no mistake. Black mist surged in Qin Feng's palm. Then Demonic, I sighed. Chapter 354. Inheritance of the Wood God formula. As the Demonic Eye's voice disappeared in his heart, Qin Feng's spirit shook, and then he appeared in a green world. He was not shocked. After experiencing so many things, his heart was as calm as still water. He felt the extremely rich power of wood in this world, and his heart trembled. The power of wood was so rich that he did not know how many times stronger it was than his power of water and fire. He thought that he had mastered these two god formulas, but compared to the power of wood here, it was undoubtedly the difference between a firefly and a moon. This was not a green world, but a small world formed when the power of wood reached a certain level. Here, he just stood and did not do anything. The injuries caused by the battle with the puppets were instantly healed. Unfortunately, he could not mobilize the power of wood here, and could not inject it into the jade pendant. Are you a pure-blooded? A voice suddenly sounded in this world. The voice was very pleasant, like the heavenly music of the 9 heavens, and it tugged at one's heartstrings. Qin Feng was shocked. He looked around, but found nothing. He quickly replied, I am a pure-blooded. Which bloodline do you belong to? The voice sounded again. Qin Feng was in a difficult position. He did not know which bloodline there was. He only knew that the tribe back then was a pure-blooded one, but there were several leaders in that tribe, and their bloodlines were different. For example, Tan Xian and Jing Wui were also pure-blooded, but they received different inheritances. Obviously, they were all pure-blooded, but there were also different bloodlines. As for which bloodline he belonged to, he did not know. He said, Senior, I only activated the pure-blooded bloodline in the inheritance of my ancestor. I did not know about the matters of my ancestor's era. The world of wood was silent. After a long time, a green light shot over. Qin Feng did not dodge and let the green light shoot into his body. In an instant, Qin Feng felt that he had nowhere to hide. All of his secrets were exposed here. In an instant, or perhaps a long time, the green light left his body. Then he heard the voice again, but this time it seemed to be trembling. Great desolate battle body, limitless. You're actually a descendant of limitless. Soon after, the world distorted in a certain direction, and the power of wood that filled the sky gathered. Finally, a slender woman appeared. Her face could not be seen, but a mass of green light enveloped her body. I can't believe I managed to wait for his descendant. The woman seemed to be very emotional. Even her voice was slightly trembling. How many years has it been? This bloodline has been envied by the heavens and cursed. I thought that his descendants had all been killed. I didn't expect that there were still descendants left. Infinity, do you see that? I've been waiting for your descendant. In the end, your lineage hasn't disappeared. Qin Feng listened quietly and did not interrupt the woman's recollection. However, there was a strange look in his eyes. When a mother of fairies mentioned Lord Infinity, no matter how he listened to it, he felt that something was wrong. It was as if there was an unusual relationship between them. After a long time, the woman gradually calmed down and said to Qin Feng, but her tone was much gentler. Little guy, You're here for the divine wood formula, right? There aren't any elves outside. It seems that you have some tricks up your sleeve. Qin Feng was embarrassed. To be honest, although he wanted the divine wood formula, he could swear that he really only wanted to find out where Tan Xian and the others were imprisoned. He came here in a daze. Of course, he did not deny it, because he really did covet the divine wood formula. No matter how powerful his descendant is, it's only natural, the woman said. With a wave of her arm, a green light flickered, and an image appeared. It was a dark, starry sky. It was ruined, accompanied by blood and bones. Even though it was just an image, Qin Feng could feel the bitter taste of the starry sky. Suddenly, a strong light bloomed in the image, causing his heart to tremble. Because it was the light of chaos, it made him understand that one of his direct ancestors was fighting with someone. That figure flickered with the light of chaos and suppressed the 9 heavens. He was like a god of chaos with an invincible battle prowess. Even the starry sky was trembling as he stood there, dim and devoid of light. He was fighting with someone and was injured. Because he had many opponents, all of them at the same level as him, he was fighting against several powerful people at the same level as him. A bitter battle erupted. In the end, Qin Feng saw that his great desolate battle physique had been beaten to a pulp. Blood and bones were scattered, and the cold wind was bleak. You can't kill my bloodline, and the heavens can't destroy it. He spoke, and his eyes surged with high battle intent. Even though he was about to wither, he still erupted with peerless power. In the end, a terrifying explosion erupted in the depths of the starry sky. One could see stars exploding one after another, and the starry sky collapsed. That kind of destructive power was almost unimaginable for humans. At the end of the image, Qin Feng saw that in an unknown broken starry sky, a broken corpse accompanied by a broken ancient cauldron traveled alone into the distance, disappearing into the boundless starry sky. When the image disappeared, Qin Feng's eyes were already filled with tears. His heart was extremely uncomfortable, and he really wanted to roar and vent it out. That was his direct ancestor, boundlessly glorious and illuminating the starry sky. But in the end, he was so sad and lonely with only half of the ancient cauldron as his companion. Senior, is that ancestor Wuji? As his descendant, you should be proud of him. The woman sighed softly. Back then, your tribe was wiped out in a short period of time. It wasn't because of battle, but because those people were too despicable. They tricked away many experts and launched a sneak attack. Otherwise, who in the world would be able to wipe out that tribe? Now that his descendant has come, it's time for the divine wood art to return to its rightful owner. After the woman finished speaking, the boundless power of wood in the world converged on Qin Feng's body. Qin Feng hurriedly sat down cross-legged and formed the seals of the 5 elements art, using this to comprehend the divine wood art. He had already cultivated 2 types of divine arts, so he was naturally more proficient in this. In less than half an hour, Qin Feng opened his eyes. In his eyes, a green light circled around for tens of seconds before slowly dissipating. Qin Feng stood up and clasped his fists at the woman. He respectfully said, "Thank you, Senior, for helping me. Don't forget the shame of your bloodline. The blood and tears of your ancestor need to be wiped dry." The woman waved her hand, not wanting to say anything more. Qin Feng hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Senior, what's your situation now? Can I help?" "The only thing you can help me with is to let Wuji smile in the underworld. Don't disgrace our bloodline." "Don't worry, Senior." Qin Feng nodded solemnly. After a moment of silence, he said, "Senior, there's a great enmity between the elf race and the human race. A few of my friends have been captured by them, and I'm also under their surveillance." Before Qin Feng finished speaking, a green token appeared in his hand. If they still respect and abide by the rules, they should know what to do. Let's go. Chapter 355. Face-to-face, Qin Feng looked at the green token with mysterious patterns on it. For a moment, his heart was in turmoil. He had witnessed the desolation of his ancestor, and his heart was filled with a bitter taste. The joy of obtaining the divine wood art was also diluted by this sadness and anger. "You know a bit." "Demon," I said. Qin Feng nodded slightly. After a moment of silence, he suddenly asked, "Old devil, how are you so familiar with the matters of that era? How long have you lived?" His palm was silent. After a long time, Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. He stopped asking and asked, "Do you think those executioners are still alive? I'm talking about the ultimate culprits who exterminated my tribe." Qin Feng knew that that era was extremely far away from the present. Most people couldn't have lived until now. However, he wasn't sure about those people who looked down on the heavens. Normally, no one can live that long. Demon, I paused for a moment, then suddenly said, "However, they slaughtered your ancestor. Perhaps there will be a turn for the better." Qin Feng was stunned. "What do you mean? Your tribe was very powerful back then, especially the top experts. They transcended the suppression of the heavens and lived for a long time. Some people speculated that your tribe might have something related to longevity. That's why the people of your tribe usually live longer than others. They slaughtered the entire tribe. If they really found the method of longevity, they might be able to survive." Hearing this, Qin Feng's heart surged with boundless anger and killing intent. He hoped that some of those people were still alive. That way, he would have a chance to avenge his ancestor. But if that was the case, then they were only able to survive because of it. That kind of humiliation and resentment was too difficult to bear. Killing them and then using their method to live for countless years. Who could accept that? Keep a calm heart. The current you can't even reveal your identity as a pure-blooded, let alone take revenge. Remember, only by living can you create a legend. If you die, you'll only become a skeleton forgotten by people." Qin Feng nodded. He naturally understood this principle. He calmed himself down and respectfully bowed 3 times to the stone statue before leaving. "I wonder if this green token will be effective," Qin Feng thought to himself. He decided to confront the elves directly. He had no idea where Tan Xian and the others were locked up. Moreover, they should already know that he had left by now. He had no time to slowly search for it and rescue them. Only a face-to-face contact could save Tan Xian and the other 2. When the sky began to brighten, Qin Feng left this place. Not long after he entered the forest, a powerful aura descended. It was the 9th-level heaven realm fairy guarding this place. It was a middle-aged man, and his eyes were filled with anger and shock. "How dare you trespass into the ancestral land?" Qin Feng looked at him coldly and said, "I want to see your clan leader." "Umph. Do you think the clan leader is someone you can meet just because you want to? Two-legged freak, follow me to your death." The middle-aged man coldly snorted as killing intent flashed in his eyes. A gigantic hand grabbed towards Qin Feng. Qin Feng slowly stretched out his right hand and suddenly opened his 5 fingers. A black light burst out and pierced through the large hand. "You, what kind of power is this?" The middle-aged man looked at the bloody hole in his palm, then looked up and angrily looked at Qin Feng. "I said, I want to see your leader." He walked forward, and wisps of black gas spread out from his palm. He said, "I don't want to kill you, so don't provoke me anymore." The middle-aged man was shocked. He felt an extremely terrifying power from Qin Feng. "I don't want to be your enemy, so please don't be aggressive." The middle-aged man looked at Qin Feng, and his expression became indifferent again. He didn't continue to attack, and he brought Qin Feng to the Elven clan's meeting hall. "Elder Han, you caught this 2-legged monster." Soon, a group of elves walked over, their eyes filled with cold light. Han Guang's face was gloomy, but he didn't say anything and continued to walk forward. "Umph, the dark elves are colluding with the 2-legged monsters. This person and those 3 must be their accomplices. Let's kill these 2-legged monsters." Some of the more radical elves surrounded Qin Feng, wanting to attack him. "What are you doing? Back off!" Han Guang angrily shouted, and these elves were stunned. "Elder Han, this is a 2-legged monster, an extremely vicious bandit. Why do you want to keep him alive?" A group of elves said with dissatisfaction, but they didn't dare to attack. "What do you know? Lord Clan Leader has his own reasons. Han Guang gloomily looked at these elves and shouted, "Go do what you're supposed to do. Stop fooling around here." He wasn't worried about what the elves would do to Qin Feng, but he was worried that these elves would anger Qin Feng. Even he wasn't a match for this guy. If he really got angry, these elves would all die. Soon, they entered the meeting hall. This was a huge tree hole. From the outside, it looked ordinary, but once inside, one would find that there was a universe inside. The interior was very spacious, and the decorations were splendid. There were tables, chairs, cups, ornaments, everything was available, and it was almost similar to a human's. There were already many elves in the meeting hall, and they were all very powerful. Obviously, they had already heard the news. One by one, they looked at Qin Feng, and their gazes were very unfriendly. Qin Feng could even feel some killing intent surging in here. Some of the powerful elves didn't even bother to hide their killing intent. Qin Feng sighed in his heart. The elves used to be a subsidiary race of his tribe. What happened later that caused them to hate humans so much? Above the main hall of the meeting hall, there was a middle-aged man sitting there, and there was a powerful aura between his eyebrows. Even if it was just a casual glance at Qin Feng, it made his heart palpitate slightly. How terrifying! Qin Feng was shocked. He had to admit that this elf was terrifyingly powerful. In his opinion, this person was probably even stronger than the dean of the Saint Ryuan. This must be the chief of the Light Elf tribe. Greetings. Qin Feng cupped his fists and spoke in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Shu Changkong looked at Qin Feng, and there was a hint of astonishment and admiration in his eyes. Your boldness is quite extraordinary. Are you not afraid at all? Hee. Qin Feng smiled. I'm inside the Light Elf tribe. If the chief wants to kill me, what use is there for me to be afraid? Chief, the two-legged monsters can't be left alive. Our ancestors have passed down a rule that we elves are not allowed to come into contact with the two-legged monsters. If we do, we must kill them. An old elf said as he glanced at Qin Feng unkindly. I also agree with Elder Su's suggestion. The rules of our ancestors cannot be broken. The dark elves colluded with the two-legged monsters and are no longer worthy of being called elves. We, the light elves, are the orthodox race. Even if we are destroyed in the end, we will fight to the death as elves. Another old elf spoke out, supporting Elder Su. Shu Changkong had a smile on his face as he looked at the others and asked, Everyone else, do you have any other objections? The elves were silent. After a moment, an old elf with one foot in the coffin with a cane spoke out. The Light Elf tribe and the two-legged monsters cannot coexist. They broke into our territory, and according to our ancestors' rules, they should be killed. However, they did save Xiaochun. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.